Volume 10. Ice-Fire Alchemical Body. Chapter 64. Ice-Fire Alchemical Body. The infernal delicate apricot had just the opposite effect of the octagonal mysterious ice grass, and it mustn't be cut with metal. Only by using jade would it not lose its efficacy. Although Tang San's mysterious jade hand wasn't true jade, there was very little difference. Using mysterious jade hand he could successfully excavate it. As he prepared all this, Tang San had already started feeling internal pains. He had already stayed next to the ice and fire yin-yang well for a considerable amount of time, and despite as much as possible staying where the two kinds of hot spring waters met, and also with the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure to restrain both cold and hot poison, by now his body was still showing a reaction. This reaction had become especially clear after picking those two immortal treasures. Cold and heat alternately burst into him, and right now Tang San's face was part blue and part red, his ki and blood roiling, mysterious heaven skill less and less able to suppress them. Poison Douluo Dalu naturally knew how difficult it was to stay by the ice and fire yin-yang well. That was why he had never brought even Dugu Yan here, afraid the atmosphere here would harm his granddaughter. But to his own toxic body, the ice and fire yin-yang well's troubles instead became beneficial, and naturally was no problem. Bringing Tang San here this time the old freak feigned magnanimity, while at the same time he really wanted to see whether Tang San, who claimed to be able to detoxify him, was able to survive in such a place. If he could even endure the power of the ice and fire yin-yang well, and still resist his poison, then he might truly believe that Tang San was able to treat him. Precious immortal treasures, Tang San sighed inwardly. He knew that if it wasn't at the side of this ice and fire yin-yang well, perhaps any one kind of immortal treasure medicinal herb would remove anything poisonous nearby to protect itself. But here it was difficult for anything to live, therefore there were still immortal herbs. Ice didn't protect, however, immortal herbs were better off. Still one had to clearly understand their properties to use them, otherwise, not only wouldn't it be beneficial, on the contrary it would be deadly. Even those great healing immortal herbs, if they weren't used in special ways and neutralized with other medicaments, their healing would result in death all the same. The two blue-silver grass flew out like unrolling bolts of silk, simultaneously falling to those two immortal herbs, the ends instantly wrapping him up like lightning. The two immortal herbs were thrown up simultaneously, falling in his direction. At the same time, both his hands simultaneously cut those two blue-silver grass strands. Without the support of spirit power, blue-silver grass had limited durability and separated where Tang San cut them with mysterious jade hand. Tang San's choice was unmistakably correct. Practically just a second after he severed the blue-silver grass, the strand on the left had already frozen solid, the strand on the right had turned into ash. If he had let these immortal treasure herbs' effects pass into his body, then he might have been out of luck before even using them. The two herbs landed in front of Tang San. Bizarrely, despite their extreme heat and cold, once in proximity, both cold and heat disappeared simultaneously. The octagonal mysterious ice grass was shrouded in red light, and the infernal precious apricot was covered in a layer of white. Tang San knew he couldn't hesitate now, after these two immortal herbs had met, even though they suppressed each other, after 10 breaths their effect would completely vanish. But within these 10 breaths was the best time to take them. Without hesitating, Tang San picked up the two poisonous herbs and swallowed them with big gulps. Even though poisonous, after they were restrained by their nemesis, they lacked potency. On entering the mouth, and passing down the throat along with saliva, Tang San only felt himself drool, a sweet fragrance overflowing. The flavor really was good. Tang San thought to himself that it was fine as long as they didn't become too spicy next. While pondering this, Tang San swiftly tore off all his clothes, no longer circulating mysterious heaven skill, withdrawing the 8 spider lances on his back and the blue-silver grass in his surroundings. In just 3 breaths, Tang San's body trembled fiercely, and immediately afterward a layer of icy blue spread up from his feet, In an eye blink his whole body had become completely blue. The next moment a layer of red rose. This time Tang San looked like a just boiled shrimp. Blue and red alternated, creating a bizarre sight. But in this simple transformation process, Tang San's mind nearly collapsed. Under two kinds of extreme shock, it was even more painful than the time he absorbed the man-faced demon spider spirit ring. Right now it was only with an effort he maintained a bit of control over himself. Hastily drawing a deep breath, he staggered forward one step. Right in front of him was the ice and fire yin-yang well. With just enough time to close his eyes, Tang San fell into it right where the extreme cold yin side and extreme heat yang side met. Tang San entered the spring waters with a splash, turning and sinking below the surface. The reason he didn't enter the spring immediately after eating the two immortal treasure herbs was to wait until the medicinal properties took effect. Otherwise, if he fell into the water just a moment too soon, he wouldn't even leave bones behind. Now entering the waters right after the medicinal properties took effect, he didn't feel anything at all, since the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot already completely removed his perception of the outside world. Tang San had naturally carefully thought over the reasons for choosing these two herbs. These two immortal treasure poisonous herbs weren't the highest quality of those surrounding the ice and fire yin-yang well, they were actually fairly ordinary. If it had only been one kind, let alone eating them, just standing next to them would have put him in critical condition. But with fire and ice suppressing each other, as the two kinds of herbs came together and caused just that neutralizing effect, this was the only opportunity to use them. Of course, the two herbs hadn't lost their fire and ice properties. After eating him, Tang San still had to endure a potent ice and fire baptism. If he was unable to endure, he would immediately burst and die. The most significant reason for using them was the ice and fire yin-yang well, since according to the accounts in the mysterious heaven treasure record, the only way to enter the ice and fire yin-yang well was with the simultaneous effects of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot. These two plants had grown while absorbing the waters of the ice and fire yin-yang well, and it was only these that could subdue the terrifying power of the two kinds of spring water. Right now Tang San appeared to be in a crisis, but in fact, the effect of the ice and fire yin-yang well along with the two kinds of poisonous herbs boosted Tang San's ability to absorb them, their ice and fire energies transforming his body. What Douluo said about not touching the ice and fire yin-yang well really wasn't empty words. Even as a title Douluo, if he fell into the spring it would be very difficult for him to escape. But within this ice and fire yin-yang well all poisons were ineffective. There wasn't any poison that could maintain its potency in this water. Tang San didn't choose these two herbs because they had the greatest effect on him, but because they left him with a way out. Just in case Douluo didn't keep his promises, after absorbing the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot, he could dodge disaster by hiding in this ice and fire yin-yang well. At the same time, Tang San had another reason for using these two herbs. Without the toxicity that allowed Douluo to fearlessly stay at the side of the ice and fire yin-yang well, if he didn't use these herbs, then perhaps he would have perished from the atmosphere here even before the agreed-upon time with Douluo tomorrow. Even if he wanted to leave now, the ice and fire energies within his body would cause him incurable devastating injuries. Let alone future cultivation, even saving his life would be a problem. However, even with the best writing couldn't be experienced. Even though Mysterious Heaven Treasure Records accounts was exhaustive, there were still mistakes. Tang San couldn't know just how immensely painful it would be until he actually ate those two plants. Even if the ice and fire energies had somewhat neutralized each other first, after entering his body they stirred frantically. The medicinal power of immortal treasure herbs was terrifying. As the ice and fire mutual suppression instantly erupted in a shocking energy, Tang San didn't even have the opportunity to resist with his willpower. The moment he fell into that ice and fire yin-yang well, he had already lost consciousness. The waters of the ice and fire yin-yang well churned when Tang San entered, but not long after, Tang San slowly sunk into the surging water. The surface once again recovered its tranquility, the milky white and scarlet red still clearly separated. The steam still filling the air, everything becoming quiet. Time flowed like a river, early morning became night by the simple events of the sun rising and falling. Someone once said, "The eyes close and then open, and a day has gone by, the eyes close, but do not open, and a lifetime has passed." Even time that seems to pass slowly can be so brief. People's lives are like this. Night fell once again, darkness enshrouding the earth, the ice and fire yin-yang well once again entered darkness, and Tang San within still hadn't surfaced, apparently he had completely disappeared from the spring water. The sun set over a forest, a group of 3 was swiftly passing through the trees, constantly advancing, moving back and forth. The trio consisted of 2 men and 1 woman, the 2 men both with anxious expressions. Even though that woman still had a serene face, her brows were tightly knit. Of the 2 men, the one that seemed thinner and weaker was supported by the arm of the other man, borrowing strength to continue forward. This trio had once been famous in the Spirit Master world, until they later collapsed and fell apart, the Golden Iron Triangle. That day, after Tang San had quietly disappeared, Grandmaster had immediately returned with Flender to where Tang San had been, summoning his spirit Luo San Pao. Even if a creature like San Pao was quite weak, it still had some extraordinary features, namely its sense of smell. Furthermore, it was integrated with Grandmaster, and could remember everything Grandmaster smelled. After a brief search, Grandmaster and San Pao immediately discerned Tang San's whereabouts. He had unexpectedly been kidnapped by that titled Douluo Dalu they met during the day. As he recalled the toxic old freak, Grandmaster couldn't help but panic, falling into that old poisonous thing's hands. How could it be beneficial for Tang San? Moreover, they basically didn't know the old freak's whereabouts. Flender was equally anxious. Even if Tang San wasn't his direct disciple, he was still one of the Shrek 7 devils. He was still a student at Shrek Academy. Even more, he had never dared forget what that black-clad man had explained to him, and that was an existence that terrified him even more than the poisoned Douluo. But at such a moment, Flender was still more cool-headed than Grandmaster. After careful consideration, Flender proposed that they return to the Heaven Du Imperial Academy. Before at Heaven Du Imperial Academy, when those 3 board members had been ready to confront the poisoned Douluo, they were clearly familiar with him. Perhaps they would know Douluo's whereabouts. And if they didn't, they could just go look for that Prince Zhu Xing. Of course, confronting an imperial prince was clearly unwise, but under pressure it wasn't an issue. After all, whether it was Grandmaster and Lu Erlong's Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon School or Ning Rongrong's 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, both were among the 7 great schools of the present age. Even if Prince Zhu Xing's status was even higher, he still wouldn't dare offend 2 of the great schools of the empire. But in the end, the trio hadn't used their plan to corner the prince by force. The 3 Spirit Douluo board members were ashamed over the previous events, and when they met again at Heaven Du Imperial Academy, as they heard Tang San had been kidnapped by Douluo, the 3 were immediately greatly shocked. They told the Golden Iron Triangle that Douluo had always been eccentric. Even if he was employed by the imperial family, he didn't live in Heaven Du City, but in the Sunset Forest. Reportedly he lived on a mountain, but they didn't know the concrete location. The 3 Spirit Douluo board members expressed regret over Tang San being missing, but they also expressed their inability to help the Shrek group deal with Douluo. Flender's trio naturally knew why without explanations. Who would want to go confront the terrifying toxins of the poisoned Douluo? Even Spirit Douluo level powers would be fearful of facing such persistent poison. The Golden Iron Triangle didn't beg, and the trio left the academy as swift as lightning, rushing to the Sunset Forest guided by Lu Erlong. The Sunset Forest was about 100 li east of Heaven Du City. One of Heaven Du Empire's several large spirit beast habitats. Even if it wasn't as vast as the Star Luo Great Forest, it was still home to numerous high-level spirit beasts. Since entering the sunset forest in the morning, the trio had already spent a whole day searching, only briefly resting before continuing. Even if Lu Erlong didn't know much about Tang San, she still greatly admired the words he had used on Grandmaster, to say nothing of Tang San being the direct disciple of her beloved. What is called, love the house and its crow. Even if she wasn't as anxious as Grandmaster and Flender, she was still deeply concerned. Erlong, let's rest a moment. Flender paused, gasping slightly. Rushing for a day didn't really count for anything to a 70-plus ranked spirit sage like him, but he was somewhat tired mentally. Erlong stopped in front of Flender and Grandmaster. Seeing Grandmaster's lowered face, she consolingly said, "Don't worry, Xiao Gang. I think Douluo Dalu might not necessarily want to kill Tang San, otherwise he would have done so immediately at our academy. Why kidnap him?" Grandmaster sighed, a painful light flickering in his eyes. "No, you don't understand. Douluo Dalu kidnapping Tang San is definitely because he injured Douluo Yan, and the talent in poisons Tang San showed. If my guess is correct, then Douluo Dalu is definitely interested in Tang San's poison, looking to see just what his poison is. And I'm certain Douluo Dalu wouldn't let Tang San live. It's just a question of how long Tang San is of use to him. Someone like Douluo Dalu is just plain evil. His reputation in the spirit master world is bad, always doing whatever he wants. With Little San's talent, if it was me, I wouldn't let Little San off." Flender laughed bitterly. "If something really happened to Little San, how could we justify it to that person?" "That person? Who are you talking about?" Lu Erlong asked, somewhat puzzled. Flender was just about to speak when, suddenly, a sharp hissing sound rose, surging like thunder, destroying the quiet of the night, causing a commotion among the spirit beasts in the forest. The trio looked face to face, standing up practically simultaneously. They had naturally heard the astonishing power contained within that hissing sound, and such power was exclusive to title Douluo. In this sunset forest, would there actually be a second title Douluo? Figures once again flashing, relying on that whistling sound for guidance, the trio leapt up, advancing swiftly. Douluo Dalu stood at the cave entrance, looking into the night sky with a jade light flickering in his eyes. Both hands at his back, spitting out a murky key. He had just now endured the suffering Tang San had mentioned. If it was just a matter of pain he might be able to endure, but that feeling of his heart itching wasn't something people could take. With Douluo Dalu's strength, right now his clothes were soaked through. His long whistling sound was an expression of his depression after that pain. Wonder if that kid has died. Douluo Dalu thought to himself. He was extremely familiar with the ice and fire yin-yang well. It wasn't a place where living creatures could survive. There were all kinds of plants there, but while plants could survive, creatures couldn't. He had once seen a poisonous six-headed bright chameleon enter the range of the ice and fire yin-yang well, and within just a few hours it had burst and died. For some reason Douluo Dalu was somewhat regretful. He actually had a bit of confidence in Tang San. And if that kid could really cure him and his granddaughter, wouldn't he be throwing away his best chance? Perhaps this test was too challenging for him. While thinking of this, Douluo Dalu's mood changed somewhat. Recalling Tang San's talent, he suddenly thought that might that child not be able to really cure him. No good, light flashed in Douluo Dalu's eyes. He'd go have a look at the ice and fire yin-yang well, and if Tang San was still alive he'd consider it again. As Douluo Dalu prepared to ascend the hill, suddenly 3 long whistles echoed simultaneously, 2 strong and 1 weak, perhaps muffled, perhaps impassioned, but none lacked intense hostility. The whistling sounds rapidly approached, and judging by their positions, the owners of those whistles were apparently coming to the mountain. Douluo Dalu squinted his eyes slightly, snorting disdainfully. "Someone actually wants to challenge me. Fine. I'll take a look at who is so brazen." Abandoning his plan to climb the mountain, Douluo Dalu took a step, instantly reaching the cliff precipice overhanging the cave. He spotted 3 silhouettes climbing the mountain towards him, leaping swiftly like shooting stars. Looking at these 3, Douluo Dalu's eyes were filled with disdain. just 2 70+ ranked spirit sages and actually even a 30th ranked spirit grandmaster. Were they coming to die? It was no wonder Douluo felt this way. With his title Douluo strength, let alone a spirit sage, even a spirit Douluo would tremble to confront him. To say nothing of his poison not being something people could casually contend with. Even equally ranked title Douluo would be careful. With one mistake against his poison they would inevitably perish. The golden iron triangle trio leapt up simultaneously, floating towards Douluo. Even if they had all along wished to be able to find him faster, actually confronting this poison-titled Douluo, their hearts couldn't help falling. Douluo stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes brimming with a sinister jade light, watching them with a burning gaze, the formidable pressure making the air feel congealed. Grandmaster didn't have the spirit power protection Flender and Lu Erlong had, and this pressure alone was enough to be fatal for him. "Were you looking for me?" Douluo said coldly. Grandmaster said angrily, "Douluo. Tang San, where are you keeping him?" Douluo disdainfully said, "What creature are you? How are you qualified to question me?" "You." Grandmaster was about to speak again, but was stopped by Flender. Flender knew that because of this relationship with Tang San, the otherwise cool Grandmaster's mind was confused, making him more or less useless. Calmly looking at the poisoned Douluo, he said with a slight salute, "Senior Douluo, Tang San is of a junior generation. I don't know how he offended you, but I ask you to be lenient. He's after all just a 13-year-old child. As a revered title Douluo, a magnanimous lord might let him off." Flender himself thought his words were exceptionally reserved, and still with a slightly mocking intent. Unfortunately, he faced a poisoned Douluo who was unmoved by persuasion. Douluo lowered his eyelids. "You're saying I'm a bully? When striking the young, the old will appear. When striking you, I don't know whether there's someone even more senior that will appear. There's nothing left of that kid. Want to avenge him? Fine, come. I wanted to exercise a bit yesterday, but those 3 old men didn't dare act. Even if the 3 of you don't amount to much, you might still be able to let me stretch my legs." Hearing Douluo say not even bones remained of Tang San, Grandmaster only felt his brain go numb, his vision go black. After so many years, the feeling between him and Tang San was no longer that between master and disciple, but had entered that of father and son. Being unmarried, Grandmaster had always regarded Tang San as his own child. Now hearing Douluo say Tang San was gone, his heart wasn't just in pain. It was despair. When people's emotions become too extreme, everyone would change in some way. Some would become dumb, some would become hysterical. But Grandmaster wasn't like others. Right now, all the energy around him seemed to have disappeared, the heat in his surroundings fading away. He seemed to become as cold as a block of ice, looking at Douluo with an equally chilly expression. Even a power like Douluo couldn't help feel a bit apprehensive under such a deathly still gaze. Flender's expression dropped. "Douluo, you will definitely regret killing Tang San. Even if we can't do it, you won't come to a good ending." Douluo curled his lips. "What? You still want revenge? No, you won't have the chance. Come. Let me see just what makes you dare provoke this me. I don't know what you believe, but I have 1,000 ways to make you lose the will to live, but I won't let you die. It's been a long time since I've seen something so amusing. Coming here is easy. Leaving, not so much. Nobody can just come to Douluo's abode when they want to." Flender and Lu Erlong simultaneously looked at each other, simultaneously grabbing Grandmaster and pulling him behind them, simultaneously each stepping forward obliquely. At once the trio had created a triangular formation. The sun and moon turns with dazzling gold. Flender shouted loudly. He didn't release his spirit, but from his body spread a layer of intense golden light. The golden light wasn't aimed at Douluo, but rather rushed toward the sky, and at the same time spread below him. Equally golden light burst from Grandmaster and Lu Erlong. Golden light filled the air. In an instant the 3 formed the corners of a golden triangle. At the center of the triangle was a golden ring, and surrounding it was all kinds of complex patterns. Right now Flender's trio were all covered with brilliant gold. Grandmaster and Luo Erlong slowly closed their eyes, and the light in Grandmaster's eyes clearly brightened, staring at Douluo like sharp swords. Yi, what kind of spirit ability is this? Douluo looked astonished at the trio, inwardly somewhat puzzled. As a titled Douluo, he was naturally experienced and knowledgeable, but he had never seen something like this before. He didn't understand why that mere 30th ranked spirit grandmaster suddenly vaguely felt as if he could rival him. 3 layers of purple air was emitted under the golden light, dissipating in midair. Seeing this, Douluo's expression finally changed somewhat. He was very familiar with this purple air. It was part of the poison formation Douluo had arranged around this mountain. Everyone who entered would be infected by the poison. This wasn't particularly ferocious, but extremely insidious. Its effects would take 2 hours to show, and after those 2 hours the poison would leach into the whole body, killing by withering the energy channels. But the purple air streaming from Flender's trio was clearly the toxin of his poisonous formation being expelled. The toxin in the poisonous formation wasn't of any concern to Douluo, but it would be fatal to ordinary spirit masters. Without spirit Douluo level strength or higher, it should be impossible to expel. This was where Douluo was the most puzzled. Clearly the 3 were just 270-something ranked and 130th ranked. So why this moment did the 3 make him feel as though they were spirit Douluo level powers? Douluo had grown strong too long ago, and afterwards hadn't traveled the continent much, so naturally he hadn't heard of the Golden Iron Triangle. The name, Golden Iron Triangle, didn't indicate the trio's cooperation, but rather Flender, Grandmaster and Luo Erlong's type of extraordinary spirit fusion ability. The spirit fusion ability was very rarely seen in the spirit master world. It required the coincidence of both spirits being extremely compatible to succeed. And Flender, Grandmaster and Luo Erlong's spirit fusion ability required 3 people to use. This was practically unique in the spirit master world. In fact, the more spirit masters joined in a spirit fusion ability, the more powerful it would be. At the same time, the spirit fusion ability's power was related to the congeniality of the participating spirit masters. Like Dai Mabai's and Zhu Zhuqing's current congeniality was only 60% or so, but when fully used it allowed him to fight 2 opponents even stronger than them. And Grandmaster's trio's Golden Iron Triangle wasn't just a spirit fusion ability from 3 people, with their mutual congeniality as if one body in the spirit master world, they could reach over 99%. Once used, their strength would multiply geometrically. Otherwise they wouldn't have been so famous. Even now, even if it was the unrivaled spirit and spirit variation theorist Grandmaster, he still didn't understand just how his, Flender's and Luo Erlong's spirit compatibility could reach such a terrifying degree. In fact, apart from him, compatibility in excess of 70% was already extremely rare. With their innate congeniality and their many years together, their spirit fusion ability compatibility approached 100%. Even if they had been apart for 20 years, right now using that spirit fusion ability that made him famous, still felt like the ice melting, the 3 becoming one, entering the rhythm of the Golden Iron Triangle. After Douluo's brief astonishment he still didn't move, just standing there holding his hands. With his pride, confronting 3 opponents so far beneath him, he naturally wouldn't rush. He wanted to see just what kind of power could be brought out by a spirit fusion ability from 3 people. The golden light grew more and more intense, and at Grandmaster's corner an intense triangular light beam shot up. Grandmaster's deathly still gaze suddenly became brilliant, slowly raising his right hand toward the center of the trio's golden triangle. Luo San Pao, along with Grandmaster's dragon-like howl, the chubby Luo San Pao appeared in the air, just inside those decorative designs in the golden triangle. In an instant, around each of the trio appeared rings of light. Grandmaster had 2, Flender and Luo Erlong 7, altogether 16 rings of light unexpectedly floated around them, flying towards San Pao at the center of the triangle. Watching this, Douluo's complexion couldn't help changing again. A spirit fusion ability using a remote body must be even more powerful than an ordinary spirit fusion ability. This he understood clearly. The pressure from that golden triangle's center increased sharply. Douluo's expression changed slightly, ring after ring of light ascending from below him, releasing his frightful 9 spirit rings. Grandmaster's trio simultaneously gathered altogether 16 spirit rings over Luo Sanpao, and the previously adorable Luo Sanpao seemed to be enduring enormous pain, facing upwards and issuing a strong dragon's roar. Immediately following, its chubby body began to swell violently under the load of the 16 spirit rings, and along with it the intensity of the light from the golden triangle increased. Luo Sanpao grew at an astonishing speed. Its chubby body began to grow vast rhombic scales, lump after lump of solid muscle bulging, its tremendous body constantly expanding. 2 twisted horns grew from its head, bluish-purple light surged into its surroundings, and washed in the golden triangle, gradually became golden. In just the space of a few breaths, Luo Sanpao had already grown to 20 meters in length. The scales on its back split open, and 2 enormous dragon wings unfurled. As the dragon wings extended, it was able to hover in the air without the need for support from the golden light. The originally honest and straightforward eyes radiated power, and just like its body had become completely golden. The current Luo Sanpao wasn't that pig or dog-like creature, rather it had become an awe-inspiring presence, an enormous dazzlingly golden dragon. Volume 10. Icefire Alchemical Body. Chapter 65. Golden Saint Dragon vs. Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor. 4 claws underneath, the whole body covered in thick dragon scales, golden dragon eyes filled with dignity, radiating an intense dragon's might, causing unsettled cries from the magic beasts of the sunset forest. Even Douluo couldn't help frown in the heavy atmosphere. Even if Douluo had thought the trio's spirit fusion ability should be strong, he still hadn't expected him to actually summon such an enormous golden dragon. Line after line of golden lightning flashed around Luo Sanpao, its body radiating golden light in all directions, hanging in the air like a golden sun. Don't tell me this is the Dragon Clan's legendary Saint Dragon. Douluo was secretly somewhat apprehensive. Even if there was nothing divine about Luo Sanpao's body, Douluo knew that the Dragon Clan's most powerful Saint Dragon would possess a golden body. Flender and Lu Erlong still had their eyes closed, completely unaware of their surroundings. The two had become like 2 golden spheres of light. What was a Saint Dragon? Douluo's arrogance was completely aroused when confronted by Luo Sanpao, issuing an ear-piercing hiss, jade-like green light bursting forth from his body, spreading his arms like welcoming the wind. The first 7 spirit rings brightened, and immediately afterward his tall and thin body started to expand within that jade light, shooting up. Equally rhombic emerald scales, like sheets of inlaid jade, Douluo's human body had already disappeared, transformed into an immense jade-green serpent. His transformation speed was clearly faster than Luo Sanpao's, and in an eye blink his body was bigger as well, more than 30 meters long, the thickness of a barrel. More than half of the serpent's body stood upright, directly confronting Luo Sanpao. A pair of enormous snake eyes stared fixedly at Luo Sanpao, a snake tongue flickering, dense green mist spreading all around. This was Douluo's spirit avatar, Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor. Douluo Yan had inherited her Jade Phosphor Serpent spirit from Douluo. But at the title Douluo level, Douluo's spirit avatar couldn't be compared to what a mere spirit sage was capable of. The Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's was completely covered in scale armor, its cold eyes unwaveringly fixed on Luo Sanpao. Luo Sanpao's body seemed to have completed its transformation, facing upwards to roar at the sky, both wings unfurling, suddenly opening its mouth. A golden lightning bolt suddenly streaked towards Douluo. Douluo, transformed into the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor, didn't try to dodge, but gaped and sprayed out a thick green fog, the 9 spirit rings revolving around that enormous body. Lowering his head, he unexpectedly used only his own body to resist Luo Sanpao's attack. With an enormous explosion, the golden lightning spread from the jade phosphor serpent emperor's head to its tail, making its enormous body stiffen. But only stiffen. Luo Sanpao stretched out its wings and silently leapt into the air, exhaling a golden breath that collided with the jade phosphor serpent emperor's jade-green fog. Right now Douluo confronted Luo Sanpao controlled by Grandmaster. With the golden iron triangle's spirit fusion ability started, the flying corner Flender contributed the ability to fly and his own spirit power. The slaughtering corner Lu Erlong provided the dragon form, while Grandmaster provided Luo Sanpao's remote body, as well as his wisdom. To complete Luo Sanpao's transformation, Flender and Lu Erlong had to focus entirely on merging their spirit power into the spirit fusion ability, but Luo Sanpao was integrated with Grandmaster, and was naturally controlled by Grandmaster. Consequently, what Douluo confronted was a Saint Dragon with Grandmaster's intellect. Of course, Luo Sanpao wasn't truly a Saint Dragon, rather it should have the qualifier, fake, in front. While Grandmaster's spirit variation had made him lose the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan's spirit, Luo Sanpao's variation didn't just result in complete inferiority, rather it had a result even higher level variant dragons lacked. Right now with the transformation of the Golden Iron Triangle's spirit fusion ability, it was just with Luo Sanpao's already enlarged veins that it was possible to temporarily possess the strength of a Saint Dragon. Even if Grandmaster wasn't strong, in theoretical knowledge he could be said to be unequaled. Confronting the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's belch of fog, he didn't let Luo Sanpao approach, and rather used the flapping of its wings to create a gale, dispersing the green fog. The enormous Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor suddenly moved, unexpectedly launching its seemingly cumbersome body into the air, chasing after Luo Sanpao with a wide-open mouth. Luo Sanpao in midair suddenly moved its equally enormous body to shift sideways, stretching out two claws to grab at the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's seventh kun. One dragon and one serpent battled fiercely in the air. The more they fought, the more Douluo became apprehensive. He discovered that this golden dragon, seemingly like a saint dragon, could actually suppress him. Serpents were also a kind of dragon, and the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor was even close to a giant dragon, but saint dragons were kings among dragons, and even if Luo Sanpao had limited energy, it was still capable of causing a certain suppressing effect on the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor. The Saint Dragon was additionally golden, innately capable of destroying evil, and had a certain resistive effect against nefarious things like poison. As a result, despite the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's toxicity, it was still unable to infect it. Douluo clearly felt that this golden Saint Dragon was weaker than him, but with its superior agility and resistance to poison, he seemed even more passive. Furthermore, the golden Saint Dragon was extremely nimble, and relying on its sharp dragon claws it was moving constantly as it attacked. The Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor didn't possess flying capability, so Luo Sanpao clearly held the advantage in the air. Golden light unceasingly clashed with jade light, the entire mountain trembling repeatedly. One moment a cliff came crashing down, dazzlingly tremendous energy fluctuations scattering the spirit beasts around the mountain in all directions, no longer daring to stay nearby. Intimidating pressure as if released by the Titan giant ape or sky-blue bull python in Stardew Great Forest. Douluo was actually somewhat depressed. Of course he wasn't unable to beat Luo Sanpao, but his abilities were excessively potent. Even he was unable to completely control his full strength, and this was his lair, and the ice and fire yin-yang well was within. The destruction from unleashing his full ability would cost more than it gained him. Suddenly Douluo had a flash of inspiration. The spirit fusion ability still relied on its spirit masters. Even if the Saint Dragon was even more powerful, as long as he interrupted the trio's spirit fusion ability, the Saint Dragon would disappear automatically. Thinking of this, Douluo's enormous snake body flickered, dodging Luo Sanpao's next attack, simultaneously lashing out with his serpent tail, sweeping at the trio like the autumn wind cutting through grass. He didn't even dodge Luo Sanpao's next attacks. An ear-piercing scraping echoed, as Luo Sanpao's dragon claws struck sparks on his body. However, a titled Douluo was after all a titled Douluo, and even Luo Sanpao's fake Saint Dragon claws couldn't penetrate his defense. But Douluo still didn't feel at ease. This golden Saint Dragon's attacks contained both the properties of lightning and fire, and even if the claws didn't penetrate the hide, the violent elements contained within did. Violent pain sent the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's body swaying. Hong, the thick as a water barrel serpent tail struck heavily on the 4 golden pillars of the golden iron triangle. But those golden beams of light didn't shatter like Douluo had imagined. Douluo just felt as if his tail had struck a mountain. Even if the golden light in the triangle fluctuated violently, the 3 people within completely lacked reaction. The golden Saint Dragon Luo Sanpao charged yet again, sharp claws flashing with golden light. At the same time, golden lightning was generated by the 2 horns on its head, fusing together and shooting out at Douluo. Simultaneously alarmed and furious, Douluo could only barely throw himself to the side, rolling away, at the same time spouting out a jade green pearl, releasing a half arc of jade green light to protect him within. Gold and jade clashed once again, intense light swirling in all directions. Golden Saint Dragon Luo Sanpao's energy fluctuations were directly repelled, and the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's body twisted violently. Juniors, are you really looking to die? Douluo was finally infuriated. The enormous serpent tail whipped at the mountainside. Withdrawing the green fog that pervaded the surroundings within itself, the muscles below the serpent's head began to flatten, raising half the serpent body. The originally jade-green snake eyes had become a terrifying white, a layer of white light coloring the serpent head. Even if Douluo couldn't use the enormous power of his last 2 spirit ring abilities to devastate this place, he had still been a titled Douluo for many years, and had countless consummate skills. Even if his title was poison, that absolutely wasn't his only ability. 2 deathly pale rays of light simultaneously shot out from Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's white eyes, directly at Luo Sanpao. Grandmaster's heart skipped a beat as he saw that white ray of light. He clearly felt that this wasn't any of Douluo's spirit ring abilities. With the change of the serpent's head, there was no doubt that this was the power of a spirit bone. Among the 6 regular spirit bones, the skull and breastbone were doubtless the most important. And what Douluo used right now should be the ability of a cranial spirit bone. Titled Douluo sure enough were an existence of their own. While ordinary spirit masters might never see a spirit bone, it was only natural for them to have one. Grandmaster didn't dare let Luo Sanpao get hit by that deathly white light. From the opponent's imposing attitude, he could see these 2 white rays weren't an ordinary attack. Luo Sanpao's dragon wings folded, its body plummeting towards the ground like a shooting star. At the same time, the golden light all over its body brightened, and it suddenly turned its body in midair. Break wind like thunder, shake the heavens and split the earth. Luo Sanpao. Grandmaster loudly called out for what was originally Sanpao's spirit ability, but as the golden iron triangle's spirit fusion ability Golden Saint Dragon, this was far from that weak technique even Tang San could easily resist. A golden fog rushed out from under Luo Sanpao's dragon tail, forming a golden shield in midair to resist that white light. A buzzing sound made Luo Sanpao and Grandmaster tremble simultaneously. The moment that golden light clashed with the deathly pale rays, the white light completely dispersed through it, and immediately afterward, an even more shocking scene appeared. That shield in the air changed fundamentally, nothing transforming into something as it dropped from the air as a big rock. Grandmaster finally understood what Douluo's cranial spirit bone was, and couldn't help but draw in a breath. If he guessed correctly, then it should be one of the first-rate serpent-type spirit beasts, a spirit bone from the Empress of Serpents, Medusa. With the Medusa's ability to turn whatever it looked at into stone, that spirit bone was from an at least 10,000-year Medusa. Although Luo Sanpao's ability was able to block this attack, the energy drain clearly weakened the golden light around Luo Sanpao a lot, and of the golden iron triangle, whether it was Grandmaster, Flender or Lu Erlong, all of them shuddered violently. Their spirit fusion ability blended all the energy of all three into Luo San Pao, making Luo San Pao's body the same as their three bodies. But this ability's greatest advantage was that, after activation, the three of them entered an unparalleled state. Unless Luo San Pao perished, or unless their spirit power was depleted, any attacks would be rendered ineffective against them. It was because of this that the previous poison formation toxin and Douluo Dalu's serpent tail attack were unable to harm them. Humph, you dodged once, can you still escape twice? The Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's deathly pale eyes once again looked at Luo San Pao. Douluo Dalu was experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally he had guessed the effect of the Golden Iron Triangle's spirit fusion ability. Even though this Golden Saint Dragon wasn't weak, Grandmaster's trio's spirit power was too far below his, and the current Luo San Pao wasn't enough to truly threaten him. If titled Douluo was so easy to defeat, how would they be known as the strongest on the continent? A long dragon's roar rose from Luo San Pao. Grandmaster knew that if he didn't use their last technique now, then perhaps his trio might be unable to endure. Medusa's stare was truly terrifying. If it hit, perhaps San Pao would be critically injured. Golden light sparkled once again. Grandmaster, Flender and Lu Erlong's trio practically simultaneously spit out blood, falling at the ring in the center of the golden triangle. Their blood instantly blended in that ring, becoming a golden bolt of lightning striking Luo San Pao's body. Spreading its wings, this time Luo San Pao didn't dodge the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's attack, its whole body igniting with golden light like flames, a dragon's call more elated than the first. Those golden flames actually condensed into another it in front, becoming a transparent dragon image, heading straight for the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor. Golden Saint Dragon's esoterics, true golden dragon. 20 years ago they had only completed half of this technique. Now that 20 years had passed, even though Grandmaster hadn't advanced at all, Flender and Lu Erlong had both reached Spirit Sage level Spirit Masters. It was the first time this ability was used fully. When that golden dragon of light and shadow flew out, Luo San Pao shrank rapidly in midair, becoming a ray of bluish-purple light flying back to Grandmaster and disappearing unseen. At the same time the light around the golden iron triangle faded. As all the gold had vanished, the trio's complexions simultaneously became pale. Bastards! Douluo Dalu snarled. True Saint Dragon was one of the most powerful esoterics of the Golden Saint Dragon. Even if it was only a fake Golden Saint Dragon, this eruption of power was still the same. Medusa's stare was a terrifying beam that could transform substance or even energy, but it still had limits. This raging True Saint Dragon was clearly beyond the limits of the Medusa's stare. And what made Douluo Dalu even more dispirited was that right now he couldn't dodge. With the True Saint Dragon's power, if he avoided it, then the mountain behind him would be leveled with the ground, and the ice and fire yin-yang well behind him would collapse and disappear. Right now, despite his reluctance, he still had to rely on his own strength to block the attack. Douluo Dalu's eighth spirit ring brightened, black rays of light dyeing his serpent form, immediately turning the jade color into forest green. Douluo Dalu's raised serpent head returned to normal, once again spitting out that dark green pearl. A bizarre scene appeared. Whether it was the pale trio of the Golden Iron Triangle, or the True Saint Dragon in the air, unexpectedly all of them instantly stood still in their places. Everything in the surroundings, even the wind itself, paused in the air. Everything was frozen. The Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's enormous body became transparent and disappeared, leaving Douluo Dalu hanging in the air. His right hand controlled the dark green pearl to slowly fly towards the True Saint Dragon. The eighth spirit ability, the one he was using now, was his eighth spirit ability Time Freeze. The destructive power of this spirit ability together with his ninth spirit ability could even level a city. But the spirit power consumed to use this spirit ability was enormous. He absolutely wouldn't use it unless absolutely necessary. The green pearl flew directly inside the True Saint Dragon. A jade light flashed in Douluo's eyes. Merge. The green light spread in a flash, completely rendering that golden true saint dragon green, actually as if it had become a jade dragon. Leaving behind a line of afterimages, Douluo appeared before the jade green true saint dragon. His face was also somewhat pale, and in his heart he couldn't help rejoice. Fortunately, this was a fake golden saint dragon. If this had been the true saint dragon of a real golden saint dragon, then even his own time freeze might not have been able to restrain it. Raising his hand, he cautiously withdrew the jade green pearl, putting it in his mouth, his left hand pressing at the true saint dragon's head. The jade light in his eyes vanished as instead his left hand became jade green. The 5 fingers closing, Douluo's eyes were like 2 cold stars as he shouted loudly, "Break!" A sharp and clear cracking sound echoed. Starting from the head of the jade-like true saint dragon, a series of cracks began to spread, in an eye blink already extending all the way up and down its body. With a flicker, Douluo had already returned to his position on the mountain, the light of the 8th spirit ring fading. Resume. The frozen space once again returned to normal, only the true saint dragon was unable to move forward, all the cracks causing it to shatter like colored glass. With an explosive sound, light radiated in all directions, a wave of energy surging out in a circle, but no longer with the attack power it had before. Grandmaster, Flender and Lu Erlong stood there, blood running from the corners of their mouths, their spirit power practically completely exhausted from the spirit fusion ability, but Douluo still remained untouchable up high. A title Douluo was after all still a title Douluo, in the end it was still their loss. Douluo's eyes held a somewhat proper mood, indifferently looking at the golden iron triangle without the ability to resist before him, but still standing straight-backed and looking directly at him. "You're not bad, able to cause me such inconvenience with that level of spirit power. This spirit fusion ability is indeed the most outstanding I've ever seen. If you had fought a spirit Douluo level spirit master instead, he might not have been your match." Douluo very rarely praised people, but the golden iron triangle's spirit fusion ability had indeed left him with a deep impression. Grandmaster calmly said, "So what, you still won. Do it." Grabbing Lu Erlong's hand, he slowly closed his eyes. Tang San's death was an enormous blow to Grandmaster, and with their true saint dragon broken, he knew it would be very difficult to leave here alive today. Their greatest asset, the spirit fusion ability, hadn't been able to harm this title Douluo. At this moment Grandmaster no longer held any qualms about Lu Erlong. Holding his beloved's hand, his heart no longer trembled. "Do you think you'll die so easily?" With a glimmering green light, Douluo arrived in front of the trio. "Wait a moment." Grandmaster suddenly thought of something, once again opening his eyes. "Douluo, Tang San was my disciple. This matter is unrelated to the two of them. Let them go, and do as you wish with me." Douluo disdainfully said, "How are you still qualified to make demands of me?" Lu Erlong smiled sweetly. "Senior Douluo, we indeed aren't qualified, we indeed don't have these qualifications. However, I don't know whether you're aware what our spirits are. Me and Xiao Gang are both from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Perhaps we aren't your opponents, but can you afford to offend our clan?" "Erlong, quiet." Grandmaster snapped. His heart dropped. If Lu Erlong hadn't revealed her background, perhaps she still might have had the chance to live, but now that she'd spoken, how couldn't Douluo pull the weeds with the roots to avoid later trouble? Sure enough, when Douluo heard what Erlong said, his expression changed slightly. Associating it with the trio's spirit fusion ability, he said with a frown, "You're actually from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan." "Good, very good. Then so what? Even if I can't beat your clan's dragon, how will your clan have any evidence to justify revenge as long as I've killed you? Getting rid of skeletons isn't any problem as far as I'm concerned." Lu Erlong said with a smile, "It's as Senior says. As long as you kill me and Xiao Gang, even if our clan comes to find you, you can avoid them without problem. But Flender isn't related to our clan. Even if he reveals it to our clan later, I suspect they still wouldn't believe him." Just he alone doesn't constitute evidence. Kill the two of us, but might Senior let him go? Douluo Dalu laughed out loud. Do you take me for an idiot? Releasing the tiger back into the mountain. Even if there is nothing in this world I fear, I will always cut weeds with the roots. Why wouldn't it be even safer to just kill all three of you? A cold light expression in Lu Erlong's eyes, flipping over her hand to reveal a blue metal ball. Then try it. This is our clan's signaling device. Even if you're more powerful than us, the moment you kill us, I will definitely set it off. This is your domain. When our clan's people come here, can you still deny relationship? As long as you let Flender go, you can kill us and I won't use it. Dying together with her beloved didn't make Lu Erlong sad, but actually secretly a bit excited. She had never felt death was frightening. Erlong, what are you saying? Don't tell me that I, Flender, am a craven person. If there's killing, then kill. When we're in the ground I will still act as a go-between for you and CO gang. What does it matter if our golden iron triangle dies together? Set off that signaling device. Then at least someone will avenge us. With a flickering movement, Flender stood in front of Lu Erlong and Grandmaster. Lu Erlong urgently said, Boss Fu, you're crazy. Go quickly, this isn't the time to show off. Flender sighed. I've lived for more than 50 years. Dying now still won't be premature. Erlong, even though you don't love me, your place in my heart is like CO gang's in yours. To you, dying with CO gang is a blessing. Then can I have any regrets over dying together with both of you? It's only a pity about Little San. Douluo Dalu, I'm not worried to tell you. Little San's father is someone even you can't afford to offend. When we don't return, my people will immediately look for him. His existence is even more terrifying than the whole Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Douluo Dalu looked at the trio with interest. So you're saying that kid still had some kind of background? Someone even I don't dare offend. In this world there aren't many of those. Let me hear it. Who is his father? Flender snorted coldly. Don't tell me you can't calculate age. Little San was 13 years old this year, so his father naturally wouldn't be too old. Adding that he isn't someone you can't afford to offend. Who does that leave on this continent? Douluo Dalu first stared blankly a moment. Very quickly he seemed to think of something, and his face immediately changed enormously. Tang San, that one was also named Tang. Don't tell me. Impossible. That kid's spirit is just blue silver grass. Grandmaster coldly said. Correct. You saw his spirit was only blue silver grass, but what if he had two spirits? Believing that Tang San was already dead, he no longer worried about secrets. What did you say? Douluo Dalu was horrified beyond description. You're saying that kid actually had twin spirits? Grandmaster calmly said. Right. Douluo Dalu's eyes revealed an irresolute light, slowly raising his right hand, an ominous glint in his eyes. Right now he had already resolved not only to immediately kill these three, but that he also had to immediately get rid of Tang San. If Flender was right, that person, indeed, was someone he couldn't afford to offend. But as long as he destroyed the corpses and removed all traces, then left immediately, it still wouldn't be easy for that person to find him. The moment Douluo Dalu prepared to act, suddenly a clear and melodious voice came from the distance. Douluo Dalu, you dare. Douluo Dalu looked distracted a moment. Turning his head to look in the direction of the voice, he saw a figure head towards them extremely swiftly, the rugged mountain path unable to hinder him. Under the impetus of 8 slender shadows he swiftly approached their side. Little San, Grandmaster and Flender said simultaneously with a stunned expression. It was indeed Tang San. With the effect of 8 spider lances he reached their side in just a moment. Right now Tang San appeared a little different, the 8 spider lances on his back having undergone a bizarre change compared to before. They were still the same size, but the originally bluish-purple 8 spider lances had now become a deep red, and on the deep red surface were arrays of white circular patterns, as if a white decorative design, making 8 spider lances appear brightly colored and dazzling. However, right now Flender, Grandmaster and Lu Erlong were all in a state of astonishment that Tang San wasn't dead, and hadn't noticed. But Douluo wouldn't let such details slip by. He was secretly startled, even if he didn't know just what had changed. As the king of poison, he clearly understood that in the realm of poison, the brighter the colors, the more poisonous it was. This kid had clearly gained something by the ice and fire yin-yang well. Originally, after Tang San had eaten the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot and submerged himself in the ice and fire yin-yang well, he had very quickly sunken into unconsciousness from being drowned in that powerful poison. The mysterious heaven treasure records accounts hadn't been wrong. Even if the two kinds of immortal treasure poisonous plants were potent, after neutralizing each other they became a treasure that could be absorbed by the human body. With the boosting effect of the ice and fire yin-yang well, they had been slowly absorbed into Tang San's body, settling in his energy channels and bones. However, the medicinal strength contained within these two kinds of herbs was just too powerful and couldn't be absorbed in just a short time. As Tang San woke up, he had discovered he was floating in the ice and fire yin-yang well, his spirit power already recovered to peak condition. Eating these two immortal treasure herbs didn't have any effect on his spirit power. Its most immediate benefit was to remove any sense of pain from the ice and fire yin-yang well. To the present Tang San, the extremely cold yin spring was like cold water, and that red-hot yang spring was like warm water, that's all. Not only wouldn't immersing himself within cause any injuries, on the contrary it was exceptionally relaxing. Tang San knew that the effectiveness of the two kinds of herbs in his body required relying on constant use of the ice and fire yin-yang well to absorb. By the accounts of the mysterious heaven treasure record, the benefit eating these two immortal treasure herbs at the same time could be described in 3 words: ice-fire protection. When Tang San was rejoicing in his success, the violent shaking and the golden light in the sky drew his attention. Even the thick steam in the air over the ice and fire yin-yang well couldn't block that intense radiance, and adding the potent energy fluctuations, he immediately guessed that something was happening outside. Such violent spirit power collisions was probably someone acting against the old freak. Unable to determine the effects the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot gave him, he hastily released 8 spider lances and swiftly dashed over. The color change of the 8 spider lances was clearly some transformation from absorbing the ice and fire power contained within the two kinds of poisonous herbs. At a distance, Tang San already used his purple demon eye, clearly seeing the situation of the battle. When he hurried over was precisely when Douluo used his formidable time freeze to completely lock down everything within a several thousand square meter area and destroyed the true Saint Dragon. Seeing Douluo about to kill Grandmaster and the others, Tang San shouted loudly and swiftly hurried over. Seeing the transformed 8 spider lances on Tang San's back, Douluo's killing plan was even easier, secretly thinking to himself that he had come over just in time. Killing all 4 together would save him a trip. Right now he didn't even think about how Tang San could have survived near the ice and fire yin-yang well. He just wanted to immediately settle his one pressing issue. Just when Douluo's killing intent rushed up again, Tang San spoke up. He didn't speak to Grandmaster, Flender and Lu Erlong, but rather looked at Douluo. Senior Douluo, didn't you promise me 3 things? Then this is the first. No matter when hereafter, you can't harm anyone related to the Shrek Academy. Douluo stared blankly. He hadn't expected Tang San to actually raise conditions at this moment. Volume 10. Ice-Fire Alchemical Body. Chapter 66. Aromatic Silk Beauty Immortal Treasure. Tang San smiled calmly, saluting Grandmaster, Flender and Lu Erlong. Teachers, I've let you worry. In fact, Senior Douluo didn't have malicious intentions bringing me here. He only wanted to examine the properties of 8 spider lances poison. Senior Douluo saw that I had outstanding gifts, and decided to instruct me in some poison-related matters. How come you were fighting with Senior Douluo? Listening to Tang San, not just Grandmaster's trio, but even Douluo stared blankly. None of them had expected Tang San to say this. Grandmaster somewhat doubtfully looked at Tang San, but he couldn't see any flaw in his disciple's expression. Is it really so? But, just now Senior Douluo said he had already killed you. Tang San smiled. That was just Senior Douluo joking with you. With Senior Douluo's identity and status, how would he bully a junior like me? Douluo looked at Tang San's back, every kind of emotion flitting through his heart. Nobody wanted to wear the dunce cap, and Tang San was instead covering up for him. Especially hearing that last line made Douluo's old face blush. Indeed, bothering a junior like Tang San, with his identity and status, was indeed disgraceful. Tang San turned to look at Douluo, still with a smile. Oh, by the way, Senior Douluo, what you said yesterday about the characteristics of Douluo Yan's venom. I've discovered that there are still ways to remove her poison. What do you say about letting me look into it with you? Hearing Tang San mention Douluo Yan, Douluo started. He knew that what Tang San was telling him was that he had already found a way to remove his granddaughter's poison. Following Tang San's impromptu performance, Douluo's mind gradually calmed. Weighing the pros and cons, his killing intent slowly faded. Because he had discovered that if he killed these four, not only wouldn't it bring him any advantages, it might even bring him a great deal of trouble. Before even the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan behind Lu Erlong and Grandmaster, what they said about Tang San's father alone was enough to give him a headache. From Tang San's talent and what Grandmaster and the others said before, Douluo had naturally determined that they hadn't tried to fool him. After all, at that time they had all thought Tang San was already dead. But if he didn't kill them, with Tang San covering it up, this enmity would all disappear into thin air. And if this kid could relieve his and Yan's side effects, then it would be his gain. Douluo being a sly old fox, as soon as he thought of this the cold expression on his face vanished, and he very naturally said, "Fine, we'll talk it over later. I didn't expect your teachers to be so caring. Just now I tried out their strength, and very nearly got the worst of it." Flender's trio looked at each other. None of them quite dared believe their ears. They had all clearly felt Douluo's intense killing intent. How could this old freak change shape so flawlessly, making it a test? Douluo walked up to Tang San's side, raising his hand to amiably rub his head, saying to Grandmaster's trio, "Your disciple is indeed outstanding. Honestly, I would make him my disciple. This old man has never been in the habit of explaining things to others, but for this kid, today I'll make an exception. Just now I only wanted to test whether you all have the qualifications to be his teachers. You're quite good, even if your strength really isn't the best. I truly admire your willingness to die as friends." Douluo's last words really weren't empty. He had always been petty, and dealt with matters according to his own preferences, but he really did somewhat admire how Grandmaster's trio calmly faced death. Flender looked at Douluo's calm expression, suddenly not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Again looking at Douluo's amiable attitude towards Tang San, in a moment he no longer knew what to believe. Tang San said, "Teachers, you go back first. Senior Douluo's knowledge of poison is wide and deep, and since my blue-silver grass also possesses poisonous qualities, I would like to learn from Senior Douluo a while. Is that all right?" Grandmaster looked doubtfully at Tang San. Of course he knew Douluo's status among poison spirit masters, and if he truly wanted to instruct Tang San, then it would naturally be of enormous benefit for Tang San. But he all along felt somewhat strange. This Douluo's change was too great. However, people were all afraid to die, and right now they didn't have a good reason to doubt Douluo's own explanation. Douluo calmly smiled, saying, "What? You're worried about leaving little San here with me? Or afraid I'll snatch your disciple? Don't worry, I've already made sure you're qualified to be his teachers. I wouldn't fight with you over it again. This kid's talent has amazed me greatly. In 6 months to a year you'll get your disciple back in one piece. Even if I haven't known him long, I'm still quite fond of this kid." Flender gave Grandmaster a meaningful glance, slightly saluting Douluo. "Poison Douluo's words have always carried enormous weight. Since you say this, then we'll take everything just now as a misunderstanding." Let me apologize to you on behalf of us three. Little San being able to study with you for a time is his good fortune. Only, this child has been with us for several years and is just like our own child. I don't know whether we can come visit him while he studies with you. Douluo Dalu calmly said. Of course you can, but not too often. Hearing this, the Golden Iron Triangle trio's hearts were relieved. Grandmaster nodded to Douluo Dalu, saying, since it's like this, I'll trouble Senior. Douluo Dalu glanced at Tang San at his side, indifferently saying, it's no trouble, not a bit of trouble. Making a throwing motion, 3 pills fell into the hands of the Golden Iron Triangle trio. Suck on these drugs while leaving and you won't be influenced by the poison formation. This medicine can be used repeatedly. Don't forget them when you come again later. Flender said with a smile. Very well, then us 3 juniors will take our leave. We will come visit Senior officially some other day. Douluo Dalu nodded and didn't stop them, letting the trio depart. Before leaving, Grandmaster looked closely at Tang San, but still didn't say anything, going down the mountain with Flender's help. Even though the 3 of them had spent a lot of spirit power, as long as they were a bit careful, leaving this sunset forest wouldn't be a problem. Watching the departing trio, Douluo Dalu withdrew his hand from Tang San's head, coldly saying, Kid, why did you cover for me? What are you after? Tang San turned his head to look at Douluo Dalu. This was our deal. You promised me 3 things, don't tell me you forgot. Douluo Dalu snorted, that's only if you can cure me and Yan Yan. However, I'm more and more doubtful. Are you really only 13? You really are a little freak. It's almost time. If you can't pass my test, you'll die. Tang San suddenly laughed. Old freak, didn't you say you always kept your promises? Just now it seemed to me that you told my teachers you would return me to them intact. Douluo Dalu looked across at him. I did say that. However, a corpse is still an intact body. You, as Tang San looked at him with amazement, Douluo Dalu already turned to walk up the mountain. Actually, when Douluo Dalu's killing intent vanished, he had already decided to let the Golden Iron Triangle and Tang San live. When he kidnapped Tang San, he hadn't expected there to be so many and troublesome powers behind them. Really, killing Tang San wouldn't bring him any advantages, only a large amount of trouble. Even though he did as he liked, he wasn't a lunatic without apprehension. Therefore Douluo Dalu had already decided not to kill Tang San even if he didn't pass his test and couldn't cure him and his granddaughter. He hadn't lied before when he said he liked Tang San. Everything Tang San had showed in their short time together had caused a bit of affection in Douluo Dalu's heart. Grandmaster's trio below the mountain weren't in any hurry to leave. This place was protected by Douluo Dalu's poison, so the trio stayed there to rest a bit instead of heading out into an ocean of spirit beasts after consuming so much spirit power. Flender lowered his voice and said to Grandmaster, Seo Gang, would you say that Douluo Dalu really wants to teach Little San? The feeling of a new lease on life was still pretty good. As long as they could live, nobody wanted to die. But after calming down, he clearly felt that this whole matter was somewhat problematic. Grandmaster shook his head, lowering his voice. There's definitely a problem here, but with Douluo Dalu's status, he wouldn't be so close to Little San without some special reason. Moreover, he seemed a bit apprehensive about what Little San said. Flender nodded. However, no matter what is said, Little San shouldn't be in danger for the moment, otherwise Douluo Dalu wouldn't let us off. Especially when he already knows Little San's background. If he acts against Little San, he'll be out of luck. Able to become a titled Douluo, he's naturally an astute person. He wouldn't easily pull down that kind of trouble on himself. Grandmaster sighed lightly, saying, right now we can only live in hope. We mustn't tell everyone about this once we're back. We'll just say we've arranged for some secret training for Tang San. We mustn't influence the other children's cultivation. Additionally, we'll also have to keep this matter confidential for the moment. We can't rush out blindly again unless we first find Tang San's father. A titled Douluo level power really isn't something we can handle. A cold light flickered in Lu Erlong's eyes. It's a pity. If we were a bit more powerful, using our spirit fusion ability after reaching the spirit Douluo realm, Maybe we could have killed that old freak just now. Grandmaster shook his head. It wouldn't be that easy. Don't tell me you didn't notice that Douluo seemed somewhat worried when fighting us just now and didn't use his full strength. Otherwise I'm afraid we couldn't have lasted that long. Flender nodded. After getting back we'll immediately send some people out to find Tang San's father. As long as we can find him, it doesn't matter what Douluo's goals are. By now the three had recovered their strength somewhat, and holding the pills Douluo gave them in their mouths, they set out to leave the sunset forest. Douluo once again reached the side of the ice and fire yin-yang well, and Tang San, relying on 8 spider lances, didn't fall behind. Right now the sky was already brightening, and after a restless night, Douluo's aged face seemed somewhat tired. Even though his strength far surpassed Grandmaster's trio, the Golden Iron Triangle had arrived just after he had endured the hour when death would have been better than living. The battle against the Golden Iron Triangle afterward brought him considerable pressure, and even though he still had plenty of spirit power, his physical strength was a bit depleted. After all, his bones were old. Douluo shot a glance at Tang San, looking at the changed 8 spider lances on his back, saying, "Kid, didn't you eat something? Don't blame me for not warning you that the medicinal plants here are much more potent than ordinary herbs. Even a tonic might be fatal." Tang San smiled calmly. "Old freak, when did you become so caring? Weren't you looking forward to seeing me die?" Douluo's face chilled. "That's right, if you can't pass my test you will still die. It's time. Are you ready?" Tang San wandered aimlessly 3 steps along the edge of the spring, standing straight, calmly saying, "Come at me." Douluo, somewhat doubting, looked at him. "Are you really ready?" Tang San nodded once again, making an inviting gesture. Douluo snorted coldly, lightly flicking the fingers of his right hand towards Tang San. Mildly green fumes quietly appeared. Douluo was indeed worthy of being called the great scholar of a generation among poison spirit masters. A seemingly simple poisoning, that green mist dispersed in an instant, just enough to envelop Tang San within. Tang San stood there, looking at him without moving. "Old freak, this was your first test. Hurry up with the second. Your jade phosphor serpent poison is so trivial, useless." Douluo looked distracted a moment, this scene clearly falling short of his research in poisons. Tang San basically hadn't taken any antidote, only stood there as if nothing had happened, his body not changing at all as the green mist scattered, not seeming the slightest bit poisoned. The green mist Douluo released was only a probing attack that could be easily cured, but he hadn't expected Tang San to dissolve it so easily. Even if he had already decided to kill Tang San, he had always had extremely high self-esteem when it came to poison. Right now he couldn't keep his competitive spirit from rousing. A jade light flickered in his eyes, turning over his hand. A jade-green little snake appeared in his palm. "For the second test, let it bite you." Speaking, he already threw the little snake at Tang San. The reason Tang San was able to easily block Douluo's first poison mist was actually quite simple. Those steps he had taken before starting had been just enough to bring him into the protective range of the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure. Let alone not using his full strength, even if Douluo brought out his most potent poisonous attack, he still might not harm Tang San. From Douluo vacantly not understanding the circumstances, Tang San could see that this poisoned Douluo wasn't completely familiar with the plants here. However, Douluo's second stage test wasn't so easily resisted. The aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure could only protect against external poisons, and wouldn't have any effect if the poison entered the bloodstream. Tang San flicked his wrist and the jade-green snake fell into his palm. That little snake seemed practically transparent, only 5 kun long, dense green light roaming within, a pair of scarlet little eyes, appearing exceptionally cute. On its body was altogether 9 bamboo joint-like stripes. As it fell into Tang San's hand it moved about softly, unreservedly yawning to bite. Hissing, the little green snake twisted, closing its mouth, unexpectedly not biting. Even if it was a poisonous creature, Tang San's mysterious jade hand was especially resistant to poison, and its incomparable toughness clearly wasn't something the snake's teeth could match up to. Tang San used 2 fingers to catch the little jade snake's 7th cun, lifting it up, saying with a frown, "Old freak, you can be poisonous enough. This is the best among bamboo vipers, 9-segment jade, infected with its poison. In 3/4 of an hour one would die issuing pus water. Even though it seems small, it's still one of the most poisonous snakes. Moreover, its body is strong as steel, even a sharp blade couldn't injure it easily." As Douluo looked at Tang San unexpectedly easily describing his 9-segment jade, he couldn't help secretly be astonished. The 9-segment jade was strangely fast, but it was still exceptionally aggressive. Falling into a stranger's hand, there was basically no reason it wouldn't attack, but how didn't anything happen to this kid? Actually, having entered the range of the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure, as a poisonous creature it suffered the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure's suppression, and as a result its speed was limited, and adding Tang San's mysterious jade hand it naturally didn't try anything. "This is my second test for you, let it bite you, I want to see blood. Don't you dare." To other people there might be no solution to the 9-segment jade's poison, but to Douluo it was a different matter. He had cultivated his Jade Phosphor Serpent spirit to the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor realm, and could be said to be the ancestor of all other snakes. Neutralizing this 9-segment jade's poison was a simple matter to him. Tang San calmly smiled, saying, "Letting it bite me is no problem, only, Senior Douluo, let's talk it over. If it bites me and doesn't have any effect on me, will you give this 9-segment jade to me as a gift? How about it?" Douluo was really somewhat speechless. There had never been anyone who hadn't been scared when confronting his poison. But this kid wasn't just fearless, he even made demands. "You're not calling me, old freak. Why switch to, senior?" Tang San smiled. "Isn't this a request to you?" "What?" Douluo snapped. "You really are a little freak. Fine, let it bite you. If nothing happens, how about I give it to you?" How could he believe that this teenage child confronting him could endure the 9-segment jade's poison? This 9-segment jade was an extremely precious creature, and he had complete confidence in it. Secretly he thought that as long as this kid was poisoned, he would detoxify him and this 9-segment jade would naturally return to its rightful owner. Tang San showed a somewhat cautious expression, drawing a deep breath, quietly circulating mysterious heaven skill within his body, slowly gathering the 9-segment jade at his underarm. The 9-segment jade had bitten Tang San's mysterious jade hand several times without success, on the contrary its teeth bounced back. Being presented with soft flesh like a prepared meal, it bit at once. The 9-segment jade's bite didn't feel the slightest bit sore, only a slight numbness, and a little tingle. But that tingle spread with astonishing speed, and in practically just an eye blink, Tang San's whole arm had already become jade green. Watching this, Douluo couldn't help but show a smiling expression. "Kid, since you know about the 9-segment jade, don't tell me you don't know about its poison." He prepared to step forward to detoxify Tang San, but before he had even finished speaking, Tang San's jade green arm unexpectedly equally quickly returned to normal. With a glimpse of red and white on the skin, the whole arm seemed like a precious jade treasure. What Douluo could understand the least was that the 9-segment jade that bit Tang San actually rolled on its belly, directly losing consciousness in Tang San's hand, motionless. Douluo's present actions as a titled Douluo made Tang San smile somewhat. Raising both hands, he rubbed his eyes. Tang San kindly reminded him, "Senior Douluo, you didn't make a mistake. Haven't I passed your second test? Also, this 9-segment jade belongs to me." "This? Kid, how did you do it?" Douluo looked dumbstruck at Tang San. He had played with poison for a lifetime, but this was still the first time he had seen something like this. Tang San still smiled, affectionately caressing the unconscious 9-segment jade in his hand, saying, "Senior Douluo, give me your third test first." Douluo's expression gradually became serious. Right now his heart was already faintly convinced that this youngster indeed had the ability to detoxify him and his granddaughter. But even so, deep in his heart he was unwilling to admit he was inferior to someone in poison. The light of spirit rings rose from below, 9 spirit rings revolving around his body, moving up and down. But this time there wasn't any pressure. Looking at those dazzlingly beautiful 9 rings of light, Tang San couldn't help inwardly gasp in admiration. Indeed, worthy of being a titled Douluo, he could even control his imposing aura. A fingernail on Douluo's hand slowly lengthened, in a moment already 3 kan long, sharp like an awl, a jade-green light giving it a colorful glow. Tang San, you must understand that even I can't fully control my next poison. Right now there is still time to regret it. I still won't kill you, and I'll let you try to cure my poison side effects. Tang San looked at Douluo's hand, his expression also becoming serious. He put away the 9-segment jade by his chest. He knew that what Douluo used this time would be his own toxin, the poison of the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor. With his cultivation, such a poison would indeed be very difficult to ward off in his present condition. But what Douluo said also aroused Tang San's own pride. Being of Tang Sect, confronting the threat of the opponent's poison, how could he shrink back? As a Tang Sect disciple, if he was someone unable to conquer poison, he wouldn't be worthy of the Tang name. After thinking a moment, Tang San touched the flower of the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure with his right hand, then walked over in front of Douluo, raising his left arm. Come on. Douluo's brows furrowed. You really want to? Tang San firmly nodded once. A cold light flickered in Douluo's eyes, thinking to himself, a tiger that doesn't show its strength, you would truly take me for a sickly cat. Don't tell me that with all these years of cultivating poison I would be unable to control this little junior. Lightly flicking his finger, the tip already pierced into Tang San's arm. Practically in an instant, a dark energy entered and swiftly spread, and in a moment that black line rose up the arm. Tang San quickly used his right hand to press down on the injury on his left arm, and while he could still move, quickly retreating a few steps, again returning within the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure's protective range. Sitting down cross-legged, he closed his eyes and silently circulated Mysterious Heaven's skill. Right now he wasn't circulating Mysterious Heaven's skill in order to force out the poison, let alone the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison. With his current level of Mysterious Heaven's skill he couldn't even have disposed of the previous 9-segment Jade's poison. The reason he circulated his internal strength was to increase the flow speed of his blood vessels. An average person dealing with poison this way would not doubt accelerate their own death, but what Tang San did now was in order to arouse the medicinal strength of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot within his body. Just like 10,000 poisons shunned the ice and fire yin-yang well, the most significant advantage of dosing himself with the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot was to change his physique with the 2 extreme ice and fire medicinal strengths. If Tang San was able to completely absorb these 2 kinds of medicines, then he would possess a body protected from 100 poisons. Of course, he still had a very long way to go to reach this goal. Before, when the 9-segment jade bit him, it was precisely the 2 kinds of medicinal herbs in Tang San's body that showed their effect, neutralizing the poison. And the reason the 9-segment jade lost consciousness was because it had swallowed some of the 2 kinds of medicinal herbs along with Tang San's blood. Fortunately, this blood was already neutralized, otherwise such a rare and precious poisonous creature like the 9-segment jade would have immediately burst and died. If Tang San was able to completely absorb the 2 kinds of medicinal herbs, he of course wouldn't fear Douluo's Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor poison, but right now he was still far from accomplishing this. Consequently, in order to resist Douluo's toxin, he had to rely on some external force. Tang San of course wouldn't play around with his own life. When he agreed, he had already made up a plan. Even if the aromatic silk beauty immortal treasure was unable to restrain poison in the bloodstream, by its very nature it could still slow down the rate of the poison's outbreak, and cause a certain suppressive effect. When Tang San previously touched the aromatic Silk Beauty Immortal Treasures flower with his right hand, it had been covered in pollen. After being poisoned, he immediately spread the pollen on his wound. The aromatic Silk Beauty Immortal Treasures pollen had the effect of dissolving 100 poisons, even if it couldn't dissolve the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison on its own. It was still enough to weaken it. Further adding the combined effect of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot, several kinds of poisons were currently struggling for life and death within Tang San's body. Douluo calmly observed Tang San. Even he himself didn't have the ability to remove the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison, and watching Tang San sit there with a face already black, he couldn't help feel somewhat regretful. He had been famous for so many years. What strength did a child have by comparison? If he died here now, the trouble would truly be great. Recalling that person behind Tang San, Douluo felt a great headache. Just like what Flender said, Tang San's father, that man called Tang Hao, truly wasn't someone he could offend. Just as man and heaven waged war in Douluo's heart, suddenly there was a change in Tang San before him. Faint red light appeared underneath his skin, followed by white light. Red and white distinctly alternated, and that quickly moving dark energy was pushed back by the red and white lights, unable to continue spreading. 8 spider lances released on Tang San's back. When fighting the poison with all his strength, Tang San was already unable to control his own spirits and spirit bone. The 8 spider lances was brightly colored, but it wasn't alone in that. The blue-silver grass within Tang San was equally released, and the originally bluish-purple blue-silver grass was still the same size, but the coloring had changed, bluish-purple with the same pattern as 8 spider lances, the color of the lines alternating red and white, appearing both beautiful and bizarre, even somewhat dazzling. It spread out from him like a multitude of vipers, revolving around Tang San's body and taking on a shape a bit like a cage. If this made Douluo startled, then, when a small pitch-black hammer slowly appeared from Tang San's left hand, his astonishment became shock. Yes, they hadn't lied to him. Even if that hammer was small, wasn't it precisely the world-famous clear sky? The poison unable to continue spreading, Tang San's mysterious heaven skill circulating with all its power and the 2 kinds of herbal medicine effects slowly compelled it outside the body. Even Tang San himself didn't know that right now he was profiting from disaster. The octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot's medicinal properties were both extremely potent. Even if one by one they weren't the best immortal treasures around this ice and fire yin-yang well, with the 2 kinds of herbs fused together, it was absolutely a top-notch existence even in this place. Tang San thought that in order to completely assimilate the medicinal properties of these 2 kinds of herbs within his body, he would need to reach at least 70th rank spirit power to achieve it. But right now, stimulated by the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison, the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot were resisting on their own, thus greatly accelerating Tang San's absorption rate. When the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison had largely drained from Tang San's body, more than 30% of the 2 kinds of herbs' positive effects had already been absorbed. Of course, this was also inextricably linked to Tang San soaking for a night in the ice and fire yin-yang well. Douluo looked at Tang San with a volatile expression. After he had finished being astonished, he who was famous for poison had by now gradually started to understand the reason this youngster in front of him was able to resist the poison. When he had just been captured by him, he clearly didn't have this ability. Whether it was spirit or external spirit bone, both had changed somewhat after coming here. Clearly he had eaten some medicaments capable of resisting poison. Ever since discovering this ice and fire yin-yang well, Douluo had found that there were a lot of plants here he didn't recognize. He had once tried to experiment a bit with the medicinal properties of these herbs, but had only let him sample pain that couldn't be forgotten if he lived forever. If it wasn't for his outstanding strength, perhaps he would have already died from poison. Ever since, When Douluo came here, he had only taken the plants he recognized. He really didn't want to believe that this teenaged kid in front of him would be able to recognize plants that even he didn't. He also knew there could be untold treasures among these plants, but having already reached title Douluo, he didn't want to take unnecessary risks. Looking at Tang San, Douluo could only think of two words: less genius. Perhaps everything Tang San possessed right now didn't mean anything to Douluo. He could still crush him like an ant, but Tang San's age was his greatest advantage. With his present age and strength, his future prospects could not be measured. Truly unfortunate, Douluo sighed inwardly. His granddaughter was really a bit too old for him. Otherwise, to say nothing of playing matchmaker for them, he wouldn't even hesitate cooking the rice before planning the meal. The red and white lights gradually faded under Tang San's skin, that pitch-black little hammer also merging back into his body, immediately followed by the external spirit bone 8 spider lances, and finally the blue-silver grass. Tang San's complexion also gradually recovered to normal. Many thanks for your leniency. Tang San leapt up from the ground, once again with a small smile on his face. Even though he had removed the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison, Tang San knew that it was only a fraction of the poison in Douluo's own body. The intensity of the toxin was directly proportional to its quantity, and even powerful poison wouldn't be a threat in insufficient amounts. Douluo had clearly started off leniently. Of course, Douluo didn't know that even this was in Tang San's calculations. When Tang San saw Douluo give Grandmaster's trio the antidote and letting them leave, he knew that Douluo wouldn't rashly try to kill him. This was a significant reason for why he chose to try and resist the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison. With this time's success, his body's ability to withstand poison had increased substantially, and the next time Douluo wanted to use the Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor's poison on him, it wouldn't be so easy. 5 kun equals 16.7 centimeters, Zhu Yi King, Trimeresurus stegnageri, bamboo viper, or Chinese tree viper. Zhu Jie Fei Kui, 3 kun equals 10 centimeters. Hao Tian, the first character is the same as in Tang Hao, and it's the same as what Flender and Wu Ji called the mysterious stranger after the Shrek entrance exam. Could also be boundless heaven. Original idiom is, the rice is cooked, meaning, what's done is done and too late to change. In this case, the meaning is probably that he would aim for a shotgun marriage. Volume 10. Ice-Fire Alchemical Body. Chapter 67. Ice-Fire Protection, 100 Poison Relief. The expression on Douluo's face vanished, again returning to the previous chill. Indifferently looking at Tang San, he said, "What did you eat here that makes you fearless even before my Jade Phosphor Serpent Emperor poison?" Tang San didn't hide it, saying, "After you brought me here yesterday, I thought it over several times and took the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot." Octagonal mysterious ice grass, infernal precious apricot. What are those? Douluo had never even heard these two names. Tang San nodded. They're two kinds of poisonous herbs that grew on precisely opposite sides of the ice and fire yin-yang well, each absorbing the essence of the extreme yin or extreme yang to grow. Listening to Tang San's explanation, Douluo seemed to recall something. "You're speaking of those two plants with extreme cold and torrid heat. Those two could be eaten." Because of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot's somewhat special nature, he clearly remembered these two plants. Those two were just two of many plants around the ice and fire yin-yang well. He had tried it out before, and even with his spirit power he was unable to stay too long next to any kind of poisonous plant. Douluo knew that these two kinds of herbs both contained cold and fire poison. Extremely potent. As a result of not being clear on their medicinal properties, he had never used them rashly. Because there was only one each of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot, Tang San didn't fear letting Douluo know, "That's right, these two kinds of plants are both poisonous. If an ordinary person got within 10 meters of them, they would freeze or turn to ashes in a very short time, let alone eating them. However, Just like yin and yang mutually subdues each other, ice and fire mutually controls each other. When these two kinds of herbs were mixed together, they neutralized each other, greatly reducing the toxicity. But that was also the only opportunity to take them. After taking them, the mutual rejection of ice and fire changed into mutually complementing each other, the effect transforming the body. Further using some methods to increase the absorption, the effect was ice-fire protection. Good ice-fire protection. Douluo looked at Tang San with a moved gaze, inwardly somewhat hesitant. Although he wasn't clear on the method of taking the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot, he knew the medicinal properties of these two kinds of plants were extremely potent, and naturally he understood Tang San couldn't have fully absorbed the properties already. If he drank his blood, perhaps. Only, he said these two plants had to be absorbed with a special method, and he didn't know what that was. Thinking of this, Douluo probing asked, "And you relied on these to restrain my three kinds of poison?" Tang San smiled calmly, saying, "One could say so. Old freak, after you brought me here, I discovered how you could survive the poison side effects. It's precisely because of this ice and fire yin-yang wells effect. The extremely cold yin water and blazing hot yang water have an extremely potent suppressive effect on all poison. The spring waters themselves are even more inimical to poison, and ordinary people would be unable to endure this environment. Even a powerful spirit beast couldn't survive. But to you this place is useful and harmless. It's precisely the ice and fire yin-yang wells atmosphere that has restrained the poison within you. Even if cultivating here isn't enough to dispel your poison, at least guaranteeing you will live to be 100 is not problem." Only, Douluo couldn't help asking, "Only what?" Tang San sighed, saying, "There was still another important reason I ate the infernal precious apricot and octagonal mysterious ice grass. It was to be able to live in this place. These two kinds of herbs mingled together is actually equivalent to a small-scale ice and fire yin-yang well, only its effect in fighting poison isn't as terrifying as the ice and fire yin-yang well itself. I have come up with two ways to remove your poison. The first is to simultaneously take these two kinds of herbs, and afterwards rely on your formidable spirit power to absorb their properties. Like that I have at least an 80% chance of being able to cure you." Douluo's expression gradually became ice-cold. "However, you've eaten them." Tang San smiled calmly, "Old freak. Let me finish first." Since he dared confidently tell Douluo about this, he was naturally reasonable. Octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot are classified as immortal treasure precious herbs. Even though they're highly toxic, there's no need to doubt the evaluation of these immortal treasures. True, they can dissolve the poison in your body, but at the same time it will get rid of your body poison skills. Do you want that? This, Douluo looked distracted. He had originally thought to take the plan, but hearing Tang San's words he immediately hesitated. Tang San saw Douluo vacillating, and said, "It's fine if you don't believe me. My blood contains the properties of both herbs. I can draw some to let you try it. However, don't blame me if your cultivation diminishes. No need to try, you little freak." Douluo said regretfully, "How do you know this?" Tang San said unruffled, "I found a book when I was small, and within was written down a lot of strange things. The book had a golden section, and I learned all these things from the book." "Just now you said there were two methods of detoxifying me. What's the other one?" Douluo asked. Tang San said, "I only have a 60% confidence in this second method, but it wouldn't impact your strength. Of course, your granddaughter's poisoning is still shallow. I have 100% confidence in helping her recover. This method also isn't complex. The reason you're suffering the side effects is mainly because of your poison skill cultivation method. It would be fine if you possessed a tool spirit. All that would be required would be for you to condense the poison within your spirit, and all the issues would be easily resolved. But right now you have a beast spirit, and as a result the poison fuses with your body. Even though your spirit power is able to transfer and suppress it, it has already long ago become part of your body, thereby causing maximum harm to your body. If you want to retain the toxin in your body, without letting it injure you, you have to find a parasitic body to act as a repository for the poison. I think that with your strength you should have a spirit bone. Douluo Dalu was also an old veteran with regards to poison, and immediately understood Tang San's words, the jade light in his eyes brightening. You're saying that if I force the poison in my body into my spirit bone, it wouldn't harm me? Tang San nodded, saying, just like that, and your granddaughter is the same. As long as you find her a suitable spirit bone, and have her force the poison into her spirit bone when cultivating poison skills, then there wouldn't be any issues. Just like me right now, even though I possess poison in my body, it's all within blue silver grass and the external spirit bone 8 spider lances, so of course there wouldn't be any issues for me. Douluo Dalu frowned. This old man has cultivated the jade phosphor serpent spirit for 70 years. My body has already long ago fused with the poison. It won't be easily forced out. It's no good. Perhaps the side effects will only grow worse. Little freak, you aren't teaching me to commit suicide. Tang San indifferently said, this is the only feasible way. Of course you wouldn't directly use spirit power to force it out. Like you said, that wouldn't have a good result, and would on the contrary cause even more powerful backlash. You have to do it in conjunction with certain medicines, gradually filtering out the poison in your bones and energy channels bit by bit, focusing it in the spirit bone. This is a very long process, not something that can be done in a day or two. After all, right now your whole body is poisonous. That's why I say I only have a 60% certainty. Only one thing is certain. Even if it's impossible to gather all of your poison within the spirit bone, it will at least substantially alleviate the pain you have to endure right now. Are you willing to try it? Douluo Dalu looked at Tang San, a reserved light in his eyes. Little freak, I've wanted to kill you repeatedly. Do you really want to help cure me? Aren't you worried I will kill you after being detoxified? Hearing Douluo Dalu say this, Tang San knew that he already believed him, and calmly said, regardless of whether you believe me, I will never reject poison. On the contrary, I'm very fond of it, and there is perhaps only one person as poisonous as you on the entire continent. As far as I'm concerned, the process of treating you is also an experimental process. As for whether you would renege, even though I can't be sure, I can explicitly tell you that killing me will also mean your granddaughter's death. I can treat you here, and when I treat your granddaughter I want to invite the teachers to observe. After treating her, there will be no relation between you and me. What do you think? Douluo Dalu pondered it, saying, fine. Little freak, there are very few people I admire, you are one. I believe you. We'll do everything as you say. I, Douluo Dalu, will always keep my word, and as long as you cure me and my granddaughter, there will be no issues with the 3 things I promised you, and I further won't kill you. But, right now I'll first ask you to eat this. My old life might not be of much value, but I still want to live a few more years. If you kill me, then I'll take you with me. While speaking he opened his mouth, spitting out a green light, precisely a jade green pearl. Under Douluo Dalu's control the jade green pearl slowly floated over to Tang San. Tang San extended his right hand, letting it fall into his palm. He didn't know precisely what this thing was, but he still clearly remembered that when Douluo Dalu had eliminated the true Saint Dragon, this was what he had used. Tang San said with a wry smile, having me eat something you spit out, this seems a bit nauseating. Douluo Dalu's cold gaze swept across him. I'm not afraid of telling you that this pill was coagulated after my jade phosphor serpent evolved to Serpent Emperor. One might say that it contains half of all my power. If I die it will burst inside your body. Let alone you, even a titled Douluo couldn't endure such an internal explosion. You little freak is quite cunning, so this old man has no choice but to reserve some tricks. Tang San directly threw the pellet into his mouth and swallowed, suddenly feeling a warm flow down his throat, and a warmth in his danshan. Not only wasn't there any bad feeling, that hot feeling instead scattered into the bones of his 4 limbs, indescribably comfortable. Douluo Dalu indifferently said, you felt it. As long as you don't play any tricks on me, the pellet will only benefit your cultivation, boosting your spirit power aggregation. Once you've cured me, I'll remove it. Old freak, I also have a condition. Tang San knew Douluo hadn't cheated him in this respect. Without investigating too much, at least right now he knew there was no danger to him. Judging by Douluo's affection for Douluo, as long as he didn't remove Douluo's poison, this old freak would hate to kill him. Douluo's brows wrinkled minutely, his face showing a ridiculous expression. Little freak, did you know that in these last few decades you're the only person who has dared make demands on me? Even that Heaven Du Emperor would be deferential when meeting me. Tang San still smiled, saying, then wouldn't what I'm enjoying now be an emperor's treatment? Old freak, my condition is very simple. While I make the medicines for you, you can't peek. This will be where I make the drugs. You only need to bring me a bit of food and drinking water every day. Afterwards you can come here every evening in the hours before your attacks to take the medicine. I don't know how much time it will take to cure you. A conservative estimate is half a year or more. Douluo nodded. Naturally he knew Tang San was afraid he would learn the detoxifying method and kill him. To this meticulous youth in front of him, he didn't know if he felt regret or admiration. Tang San, do you wish to take this old man as teacher? If it had been an ordinary spirit master, on hearing Douluo's words they might have shed tears of gratitude and immediately kneeled to become an apprentice. But Tang San didn't. He only shot Douluo a glance, saying, old freak, I think this term of address suits you quite well. I wouldn't want to change it. Besides, you think you can teach me anything about poison? Perhaps in some things you should be consulting me. You, fine, little freak, we'll wait and see who's right. Douluo resisted his anger, resolutely glaring at Tang San, then leapt up towards the mountain top. In a few leaps his silhouette had already disappeared. With Douluo gone, Tang San sat down on the ground as if he had lost all his strength, heaving great mouthfuls of air. He found that his back was ice cold from sweat. Even if he had grasped Douluo's personality, deep in his heart he still didn't have perfect confidence, and if by some chance the old freak went crazy in spite of everything, he'd immediately become a corpse. Looking around him at all those rare and precious medicinal herbs, a small smile appeared at the corners of Tang San's mouth. Douluo, oh, Douluo, it seems I must thank you. There isn't any place more perfect than this. Searching his chest pocket with a hand, he pulled out that 9-segment jade. With a trembling hand he directly threw it at the ice and fire yin-yang well. This 9-segment jade had sucked his blood. If it didn't have the assistance of the ice and fire yin-yang well, even though it was poisonous itself it would still die. But it could take refuge in the ice and fire yin-yang well. Tang San naturally wouldn't show his secret escape route to Douluo. Feeling his stomach, Tang San couldn't help smiling wryly. He knew he didn't have any way of contending with that pellet. Let alone basically being unable to extract it. Even if he could he still wouldn't do it. The pellet was linked to Douluo's heart's blood. If he did something to it, Douluo would discover it immediately, and he'd meet a dead end. It was a pity, truly a pity. Tang San looked at the surrounding herbs, inwardly sighing in regret. Each immortal treasure here was unique, but as they said, delicacies didn't have many uses. Tang San knew that if he greedily ate any one of the great immortal treasure herbs, not only wouldn't it be beneficial, he might immediately be out of luck. Only after the octagonal mysterious icegrass and infernal precious apricot had been absorbed as far as possible within his body could he think about it again. Among the immortal treasure herbs were at least 7 or 8 kinds that could greatly boost his internal strength, at least advancing his spirit power by 5 ranks, or even more. It doesn't matter, can't I still take what I can't eat? Tang San showed a smiling expression, stretching out his hand to feel at his waist. In a moment, a mess of things was laid out on the ground. These things were largely some small cases and bottles, each one different from the next. Gold, silver, copper, iron, jade, various kinds of cases and bottles were arranged on the ground. These were all things Tang San had prepared long ago in order to go find herbs suitable for making poison for hidden weapons. The more precious the herbs, the higher the requirements for storing them. Some had to be picked with gold and packed with jade, some had to be picked with silver and stored with iron. With just the slightest mistake, their efficacy would diminish greatly, or even immediately wither. Therefore Tang San had made a lot of preparations. Of course, it still wasn't time to be packing herbs. Once Tang San had inspected these tools, he once again withdrew them into the 24 moonlit bridges, afterward starting to carefully catalogue each treasure around the ice and fire yin-yang well. There were a lot of medicinal herbs, and some with extremely similar appearance could have effects that were diametrically opposed. Tang San couldn't allow himself to make any mistake. There were accidents where poison was mistaken for tonic even at Tang Sect. The way of poisons was wide-ranging and broad. He couldn't be the slightest careless, or he would be gambling with his own life. That evening, when Douluo came once again to the ice and fire yin-yang well to bring Tang San food and water, he couldn't help be angry. Because Tang San basically didn't have any medicine for him. But Tang San's reasoning was extremely dignified. There was nothing here, so how could he make drugs? Helplessly, Douluo had no choice but to bring him some of the medicine-making tools he personally used every day. Even more at Tang San's request, he went to buy him a large cast copper cauldron. There was no need for fire in this place. The blazing hot yang side of the spring was more terrifying than any flame, practically like magma. Even if it was just a bit, it could melt gold into iron. Just like this, from this day onward, Tang San lived at the ice and fire yin-yang well. As long as Douluo wasn't present, he soaked in the ice and fire yin-yang well to cultivate. This didn't just boost his mysterious heaven skills circulation, at the same time it also accelerated his absorption of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot's properties. In the afternoon he made drugs. He hadn't worked with these things for very many years, so in order not to make any mistakes he was extremely careful. As time passed he gradually grew more skillful. However, Tang San did after all come from Tang Sect, and was an expert in refining poison. That he couldn't refine tonics was regretful. Tang San used a whole 3 months to gain a clear grasp on the herbs around the ice and fire yin-yang well, and tried making practically every kind of poison. As for the doses of the antidote he gave Douluo, it wasn't anything worth mentioning. Just some muscle-relaxing and blood-circulating medicine, that was all. But with each dose of this medicine Tang San included a drop of his own blood. Actually, Douluo was still being swindled by Tang San. The poison in his body, most crucial was the location, as well as the 2 kinds of extreme properties of the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot. However, Tang San didn't cheat him completely. If Douluo directly ate the 2 herbs, it would immediately drive out the poison skills in his body. But after being transformed within Tang San, their properties became a lot milder, and with the imperceptible influence of a small dosage, it became a therapeutic effect. After Douluo had taken it for a week, the pain of the poison side effects had clearly alleviated. And slowly accumulating the poison in his spirit bone, like Tang San said, not only didn't weaken him, but even showed signs of fracturing the 91st rank bottleneck he had been unable to break through for years. One must know that past the 90th rank, each rank was an enormous bottleneck. Douluo had already been stuck at the same level for a decade. How couldn't these signs of breaking through make him wildly excited? The merits of the antidote clearly improved Douluo's attitude toward Tang San. Not only was he more amiable, but every night when he came to take the medicine and deliver basic articles, he would also talk about some knowledge relating to poison. Tang San had inherited the Tang Sect's poison capability, but there were some things different between his old world and this one. And in this world, there was no one more knowledgeable about every kind of poison than Douluo. Tang San naturally learned a lot from him, but as Douluo came to know Tang San, he became more and more fearful. This just 10-something kid seemed to have a mind as vast as the boundless ocean. In all kinds of poison lore, he sometimes gave him the feeling of producing sudden flashes of insight. Originally, when Tang San refused becoming an apprentice, Douluo had been extremely indignant. But after some time he discovered that Tang San wasn't being arrogant. With regards to poison, even if he wasn't as experienced as himself, his theoretical understanding wasn't unlike his own. With the two mutually researching the use of poison, they both profited a lot. And as time passed, their mutual wariness dulled. Of course, Douluo's pearl was still within Tang San's danshan, but Tang San didn't protest. One old and one young were like close friends, passing every day similarly. Funnily enough, Douluo, relying on his own understanding of drugs, after eating the antidote Tang San gave him, would return to make it on his own, but even though his antidote used precisely the same ingredients as Tang San's, it still didn't have any effect. He had no way of knowing that Tang San's version contained the most important ingredient. In the blink of an eye, half a year had already passed. In the past half year, Grandmaster and Flender had visited twice, but as they saw the harmonious relationship between Tang San and Douluo didn't seem fake, and further adding Tang San never voicing concerns about his safety, the two were finally relieved. They only repeatedly reminded Tang San that after this learning period finished, he would return directly to join the new Shrek Academy. Douluo was after all a titled Douluo. Even though Tang San could match him in knowledge of poison, he was far from comparing with Douluo in spirit power and cultivation. Douluo fondly remembered Tang San's work in detoxifying him and occasionally gave him pointers, making Tang San's understanding of spirits even more profound. Douluo's theoretical understanding didn't match Grandmaster's, but he had after all experienced the whole process of cultivating to the titled Douluo level, and possessed experiences Grandmaster didn't. As a result, Tang San benefited not a little from him. Further adding the ice and fire yin-yang well, continuously helping Tang San absorb the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot to transform his body, as well as the effect from Douluo's pearl. In this half-year, Tang San's spirit power could be said to have advanced by leaps and bounds. From his original 34th rank, he had already advanced 3 ranks to reach the 37th ranked realm, about to catch up to where Daimabai had been. Little freak, I'm here. Douluo dropped from the sky with a smirk. Yi. Douluo looked to where Tang San habitually rested. Every night when he came here, Tang San would also greet him, but today there wasn't any sound. Could he have gone out for something? Douluo was inwardly alarmed, and in several leaps, as he saw Tang San sitting there, he breathed out slightly. Even if he didn't admit it even to himself, Douluo no longer had the previous ill will towards Tang San, and even regarded him as a friend. Douluo was naturally eccentric, and he cultivated a poisonous spirit. Ordinarily, there wouldn't be any spirit masters that wanted anything to do with him. Even if there were, they'd mostly be afraid. But even though Tang San always called him old freak, these days had imperceptibly given rise to a kind of familiar feeling for Douluo. A bit like a senior to a junior, or the concern between friends. Besides, he still needed Tang San's antidote. Tang San sat upright, lifelessly staring ahead. And in front of him was the drug-refining copper cauldron. Right now the copper cauldron was supported over the blazing hot yang spring, the bottom slightly touching the spring water, using the yang water's heat. If an ordinary copper cauldron had come into even the slightest contact with the blazing hot yang waters, it would have turned into liquid copper. But Tang San had smeared this cauldron with a kind of herb from the extremely cold side of the well, allowing it to withstand the extreme heat. Further adding his own fearlessness of the blazing heat of the yang spring, it could be controlled. Douluo, somewhat curious, crouched at Tang San's side. Little freak, what are you doing this time? Tang San brought a finger to his lips, making a silencing gesture, his eyes still fixed with full concentration on the copper cauldron. Douluo followed Tang San's gaze. He only saw faint purple smoke constantly flow out through a small crack in the cauldron's lid. He had long ago already become used to this kind of situation. Tang San would frequently concoct some kind of poison, making him unable to help sighing in admiration. Only Tang San's refusal to speak of his recipes made Douluo constantly depressed. That purple smoke rising from the cauldron didn't scatter above, swaying slightly. Douluo's nose twitched slightly. With his internal poison skills, his ability to resist poison was even more powerful, and naturally he wouldn't be afraid. But he quickly discovered that the purple smoke didn't have any smell, leaving him without hints as to its composition. For some reason, looking at that purple smoke rising in spirals, he felt a slight chill in his heart. As a spirit master with poison abilities, Douluo understood very clearly that what he felt was a kind of intuition exclusive to him, only appearing when he encountered something that could threaten his life. This little freak had actually refined a poison that could even make him feel threatened. In fact, even though Tang San had refined a lot of poisons and even clever drugs that had made Douluo sigh in admiration in the last half-year, he had still never produced something that could threaten even him like today. He didn't dare disturb him, and just sat next to Tang San, waiting calmly. Tang San's expression was unprecedentedly serious, constantly watching the copper cauldron and the purple smoke rising from its lid. As time passed, the purple smoke became thinner and thinner, and at the same time the color changed from purple to white, then once again from white to black, in a bizarre process. Over the course of this process, Tang San used blue-silver grass to open the cauldron and insert some medicinal plants 3 times. Even though by now his blue-silver grass had already attained ice-fire protection, each time it still withered. Thus, Douluo's curiosity increased even more. After drinking his tonic, he quietly operated his poison skills, trying out the energy within that smoke. However, no matter how he tried, he was still unable to figure out just what medicaments had gone into that purple smoke. Douluo only felt that it should be a mix of several kinds of poisons, complementing each other to create an extreme toxicity. Don't tell me this kid wants to kill me, Douluo thought to himself. Otherwise, why would he be refining such an extremely poisonous drug? But he quickly dispelled this thought. Let alone their relationship having become friendly, even if Tang San really wanted to poison him, he wouldn't refine it right in front of him. The refining process was endless, and by the morning the next day, the sky already bright, and Douluo felt a bit impatient. That black smoke rising from the copper cauldron finally stilled and withdrew within the cauldron. It's done. Tang San suddenly leapt up, an uncontainable excitement in his voice. His current excitement actually matched his age. Little freak, what is it you've done? Douluo couldn't help asking. Tang San released a long breath. Looking at Douluo, he mysteriously said, "It's a treasure. The treasure of a lifetime. I can guarantee that even if it hit you, you would still only have time for 3 breaths. Of course, it's no threat to you. Your skin is too thick and it couldn't enter your body. I'll let you see my masterpiece in a bit." A dozen blue-silver grass strands whirled out, dragging the copper cauldron back to shore. He waited for the cauldron to slowly cool without urgency. Since Tang San had already said this, Douluo could only wait. After no less than an hour, after the cauldron had completely cooled, Tang San stepped forward and cautiously uncovered the lid. Douluo used his poison skills to protect himself, stretching forward his head to look inside the cauldron. Inside, in the center was a small metal disc, surrounded by completely dried-up remains, probably the remnants of dried-out plants. And in the center of that disc were 3 1-kun long, completely unreflective pitch-black little needles. "You've worked for half a day, what is?" Douluo snorted unhappily. "What use is this toy?" Tang San grinned and, using mysterious jade hand, cautiously took out the mold, further taking out a prepared small jade case from 24 moonlit bridges and slipping the 3 needles into 3 grooves. "It's a poison capable of killing a title Douluo, and you're asking what use it is." A burning light flickered in Tang San's eyes. Back at Tang Sect, this kind of gaze would appear every time he produced a super hidden weapon. "This thing can kill a title Douluo. Don't joke with me." Douluo's expression was disbelieving. This little toy wouldn't even penetrate a title Douluo's defense. What use is the poison? Tang San glanced at Douluo. Do you know about what's called hidden weapons? Hidden weapons are weapons used surreptitiously. Even if it can be blocked from the front doesn't mean it can never have any use. Besides, in order to use these 3 needles I have to first break through the 40th rank of spirit power. They require a special technique to use. They're called Yama's invitation. Yama's invitation. Why so? Douluo couldn't make sense of it. Tang San looked at the 3 small needles in the jade box in his hand, his eyes expressing an infatuated light, as if looking at a rare treasure. Yama refers to the god of death. When speaking of gods in antiquity, if saying that the god of death had invited you, what did that mean? Naturally it was to have you return to the embrace of the god of death. If Yama called for your death at the 3rd watch, nobody would dare wait until the 5th watch. Volume 10. Icefire Alchemical Body. Chapter 68. Wishful 100 Treasure Purse and Cluster Soul Chasing Ball. Pay, you can return to the arms of death. Douluo snappily rapped Tang San on the head. From his expression, Tang San could see he didn't believe in the power of the Yama's invitation in his hand. Actually, even Tang San hadn't expected he would be able to refine the Yama's invitation. As the 3rd ranked in the 100 weapon separation of the mysterious heaven treasure record, how couldn't he be excited? In his previous world, anyone in the martial world would tremble when hearing the name of the soul and life capturing Yama's invitation. In order to refine Yama's invitation, Tang San used 49 kinds of precious herbs near the ice and fire yin-yang well, in order to make this Yama's invitation's poison irresistible. These black little needles basically weren't metal, but were completely condensed from poisonous substances. Once it entered the body it would immediately turn back into poison, taking effect immediately. Let alone an antidote, even if one existed, there wouldn't be a chance to use it. There wouldn't even be enough time for a hero to cut off his wrist. Yama's invitation, how could it be so easily received? However, the technique for launching Yama's invitation required enormous internal strength. By Tang San's calculations, to have enough mysterious heaven skill to use Yama's invitation, he would need to reach at least the 40th rank, and moreover his entire internal strength would only be enough for one attack. But this was already sufficient. Even if Tang San hadn't tried it, he could be certain that even if he was unable to kill powerful opponents, as long as he could get the Yama's invitation to pierce the skin, then the opponent would soon have his life and soul captured. Cautiously putting the jade box within 24 moonlit bridges, Tang San thought to himself that this was fortunately at the side of the ice and fire yin-yang well, otherwise, where would he find so many precious herbs? Unfortunately, the 2 higher-ranked hidden weapons couldn't be created just with herbs. Sorting out his thoughts, Tang San looked at Douluo. Over this past half-year, Douluo's appearance had changed considerably. The originally wretched green hair had already become an ordinary grizzled color and, besides his eyes, his green tint had gradually vanished. Half a year of medication left Douluo practically without the pain from the poison backlash. But he had after all been poisonous for many years. Completely purging himself was practically impossible. Douluo was already extremely satisfied with his present condition. Naturally he was aware of his circumstances. At the same time he could be certain that using the same method to eliminate his granddaughter's poison wouldn't be a problem. Little freak, return it to me. Douluo noticed Tang San looking at him, and extended his right hand to make a gesture. Return it. Return what? Tang San puzzled asked. Douluo said. What? Don't tell me you still want to keep my pearl your whole life. I'd hate to part with it. Tang San, somewhat astonished, said. You're not afraid I'll poison your medicine? Douluo snorted. By now I've internalized the poison skills, gathering them in my spirit bone. Mere poisoning, I suspect there isn't any kind of poison that can kill me. Even if those little needles of yours could really deal with a title Douluo, they would be useless against me. Quickly give it back. Haven't you had enough benefit from it already? In this half year your spirit power has already reached the 37th rank. I'm afraid you'll absorb all the energy of the pearl. Tang San smiled. He knew that even if Douluo didn't want to admit it, he already didn't have any wariness towards him. In this half-year he had also gradually come to understand Douluo. This seemingly extremely ferocious poison Douluo actually wasn't much different from common elders. Even if the words that came out of his mouth were frightening, his basic character wasn't bad. As long as he wasn't threatened or offended, he wouldn't casually go looking for trouble. Take it. Frankly, I'm also a bit reluctant to part with it. Tang San looked at Douluo with a smile, spreading his arms. Douluo stepped in front of Tang San, raising his hand to push at Tang San's stomach. A scorching hot energy immediately provoked a contraction in Tang San's danshan, and immediately afterward, along with Douluo drawing his hand up, the hot flow followed up to the throat. Tang San opened his mouth, and with a green light the pearl flew out, falling into Douluo's hand. Even though it seemed like such a small thing, Tang San still relaxed his whole body. The threat to his life that had troubled him for half a year was finally dealt with. In fact, he hadn't had any way to deal with Douluo's pearl. Little freak, my poison is also practically under control, and recently I've felt your antidote have less and less of an effect on me. There's a lot of poison accumulated within me. I know that myself, it's impossible to completely store it in the spirit bone. Besides, my body has already adapted to a certain degree of poison. If I didn't have any at all, it might actually be harmful. I'll consider it treated here. Later I'll bring your teachers as well as my granddaughter, and once you've cured Yan Yan, you can leave. You're letting me leave? Tang San looked at Douluo. He didn't know why, but deep down he was somewhat reluctant to go. Was it a reluctance to part with these precious herbs around the ice and fire yin-yang well? Perhaps, but that wasn't everything. Douluo's expression seemed somewhat lonely. You're still young, I can't keep you here for a lifetime. It's a pity. If you were a few years older, I'd marry my beautiful granddaughter to you, then you could call me Grandpa. Tang San helplessly shook his head, saying, forget about it, it's enough for that granddaughter of yours to inherit your traditions. Besides, she's already got a lover. The Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan's direct heir. Wouldn't he be more outstanding than me? Kid, are you provoking me? Even if the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan is powerful, compared to your background it doesn't count for anything. Besides, that kid Yu Tianheng still lacks a lot compared to you. My background? Tang San stared blankly, unconsciously recalling his, for several years unseen, even without a letter, father. He couldn't help sighing. What background? I'm just a blacksmith's son. Douluo also stared blankly. Over this half-year he had also gained a considerable understanding of Tang San. From his expression he could clearly see that Tang San wasn't deliberately putting on an act. Kid, tell me about your past. Douluo pulled Tang San to sit by the ice and fire yin-yang well. Tang San nodded, and besides his greatest secret of passing into this world, he didn't hide anything about his life since coming to this world. At once, he spoke of everything from his childhood, spoke of his innate full spirit power, twin spirits, even further spoke about taking Grandmaster as his master, as well as entering Shrek Academy and everything that happened afterward. He recounted everything in detail. Carefully listening to Tang San's story, Douluo was inwardly astounded. Even if he was still certain that Tang San was that person's son, he hadn't expected he would be left like that in his childhood. Then where did you learn about poison? Picking up a book to reach this level. This old man doesn't believe it. Tang San grinned, doesn't matter if you believe it. It's a secret, I'm not telling. Douluo snorted, then I'll leave it at that. Take this. While speaking, Douluo pulled out a blue leather purse from somewhere and tossed it to Tang San. The leather purse was only the size of 2 adult palms, the kind that was hung from the belt. Even if it was much larger than a spice bag, it could comfortably fit in one hand. What's this? Are you bribing me? Tang San suspiciously untied the leather purse. Without asking, he knew this was a spirit tool. I already have teacher's 24 moonlit bridges. You keep this, or give it to your granddaughter. Douluo shook his head. No, this is different from the one you have. My granddaughter doesn't like playing with these drugs. Giving it to her is a waste. It's called Wishful 100 Treasure Purse. Even though that spirit tool of yours is pretty good, it's still a bit lacking compared to this. Because yours can hold dead things, mine can hold living things. Tang San was intelligent, and immediately understood what Douluo was saying. His lips moved slightly, whistling quietly. A thread of jade light whooshed out from Tang San's bosom and into his palm. It was precisely that 5 kun long, entirely jade green 9-segment jade. In the past half year the 9-segment jade had shown a not inconsiderable change. Its size hadn't changed, but its little eyes had become even more sparkling, its whole body also close to transparent, jade green as if carved from perfect jade, red and white streams moving within its body, and when it was motionless it appeared like a decoration rather than a living thing. In other words, this little creature can be held inside without suffocating. Tang San's expression was pleasantly surprised. A spirit tool that could hold living things was vastly different from his 24 moonlit bridges. It wasn't just holding the little 9-segment jade in his hand, even herbs could be kept fresh inside. Like this, he wouldn't need to render herbs into pills to carry them. In fact, a lot of herbs that could be used fresh would have a better effect the fresher they were. Douluo looked at Tang San's surprised face, and grinned. Just now you seemed to say you didn't want it, yes? Then give it back. While speaking, he extended his hand and gestured at Tang San. Perhaps it was because he had been together with Douluo for so long, but Tang San's character had also been a bit infected. With no trace of politeness he hung the Wishful 100 treasure purse on his 24 moonlit bridges. Did I? I can't remember. Giving me something then still wanting it back. Are you still a title Douluo? Douluo snorted. Anyway, there's only you and me here. What's a title Douluo? Title Douluo are still people. I promised you that as long as you could cure my poison, I would grant you 3 things. The first you've already said. I can't injure Shrek Academy's people. If I give you this Wishful 100 treasure purse, isn't it a second? Tang San winked at Douluo, somewhat innocently looking at the poisoned Douluo. Old freak, just now you were the one who took the initiative. Give it to me. Why should I care what you think? Douluo was immediately angry, but unfortunately he didn't have a way against Tang San. Tang San calmly smiled, touching his waist. He flicked his wrist, holding out his palm to Douluo. Even if the Wishful 100 treasure purse can't be considered one of the conditions, I can't take something for nothing. I'll give you this in return. Douluo looked at Tang San's palm. In it quietly lay 2 not very large iron balls, completely pitch black, without any visible features. What's this? Poison? Or a tonic? Douluo sniffed, but didn't smell anything, and asked curiously. Tang San smiled. Can't you see? These are 2 iron balls. Where would there be any drugs? Old freak, don't tell me you can't even tell the difference between medicine and metal. Douluo glared at him, saying, how can these 2 things compare to my Wishful 100 treasure purse? Tang San said, why wouldn't they? They can save your life. Douluo snorted disdainfully, little freak, there's no problem with your brain. This old man is a title Douluo. There aren't many people in this world who could prevail over me. Just a few people with abnormal strength. What can relying on these 2 iron balls do? Tang San said, you don't believe me? Then fine, I would be reluctant to give them to you. While speaking, he was about to withdraw the iron balls. With a flash of green light, before Tang San could turn his wrist, those 2 iron balls were already in Douluo's hand. Giving things and then taking him back. Aren't you the cheeky one? Tell me, what use are these things? Douluo held the 2 iron balls in his left and right hand, but didn't see any result. Using the other hand to pinch one, he was just about to test its strength when Tang San hurriedly stopped him. Do you want to die? Don't pinch it. Tang San caught Douluo's wrist. Even though his strength didn't have any effect on Douluo still held a lot of trust in him and quickly relaxed his grip. What are you doing? So mysterious, quickly tell me. What is this thing really? Douluo asked somewhat impatiently. His curiosity wasn't any different from normal people. Even though he expressed disdain on the surface, in his heart he was still certain that something a little freak like Tang San would give him as a gift wouldn't be any ordinary goods. At this, Tang San sternly said, "This thing is known as a cluster soul-chasing ball. It's one of the most potent hidden weapons I can make right now. You must absolutely be careful with it. Once it suffers enough external pressure or a hit, its power will appear immediately. These things are used two together. They have to be used with a swift throwing technique. Perhaps its immediate power isn't enough to harm a titled Douluo, but its unexpectedness and power is enough to stop any enemy. The greatest feature of these is the user's internal. No, the higher the spirit power, the more powerful it is. These two little things can be powerful." Douluo was still somewhat unconvinced. Tang San said, "I'll try them for you to see." While speaking, grabbing the two iron balls in Douluo's hands, he weighed them in his hands. "Look closely." While speaking, white light flickered around Tang San, and with a flick of his wrists the two iron balls flew out simultaneously. Even though they flew out simultaneously, the two iron balls traveled one after the other. The moment the one in front was about to lose momentum, the rear one suddenly chased after it, directly striking the one in front. With a bang, a purple fog filled the air, in a flash covering more than 10 square meters. With Douluo's eyesight, he clearly saw what was happening inside the purple fog. Countless small filaments burst out with a delicate hum, in an eye blink piercing into the not distant mountain wall. Tang San said, "What is called cluster indicates the burst attack after the iron balls have ruptured. This purple fog is extremely poisonous. It has a potent anesthetic effect, and as long as someone inhales a little bit, ordinary people will sleep for 10 days. Even powerful spirit masters who thoughtlessly get affected would be forced to slow down. And after the two cluster soul-chasing balls collide, they will immediately emit the filaments within. Those are several hundred bone-changing soul needles, specially for breaking Big Dipper defensive ki, with a matchless poison that, once hit, will spread quickly, ossifying their path like cotton." These cluster soul-chasing balls were what Tang San had made while in seclusion at the Shrek Academy. It was considered a combined product of both mechanical class and throwing class hidden weapons, ranked 5th among mechanical class hidden weapons. When he was at Tang Sect, Tang San had been specially in charge of producing these cluster soul-chasing balls, and it was also by making these that Tang San had been considered the first or second best among Tang Sect outer disciples. This time Tang San had made altogether 18, or to say 9 pairs. Originally they had been unpoisoned since he didn't have the ingredients, but since coming here and spending this time refining, these cluster soul-chasing balls had become truly complete. As a result of having all kinds of top-quality drug ingredients here, these cluster soul-chasing balls' bone-changing soul needles were even a bit better than in his previous life. Douluo's figure flickered, and he already appeared by the bone-changing soul needles in the mountain wall. As he looked closer at everything before him, he couldn't help but inhale deeply. Countless black little holes had appeared on the mountain wall, each one penetrating several chi inside, faintly blue smoke emerging, and just by using his nose he could detect that dreadful poison. Turning back to Tang San, Douluo couldn't help but sigh in admiration. "Little freak, I really don't know if I should call you a genius or a lunatic. You can even make these things. I really don't know how your head is put together. However, looking at this attack power, it still seems far from enough. Let alone a titled Douluo, even a 60th or 70th ranked spirit master would have enough defensive power to withstand it." Tang San snapped, "Old freak, tell me, what rank am I?" Douluo moved back towards him. "Over 30th, not more than 40th anyway." Tang San said, "Just now I said that when using these things, the higher the spirit power, the more powerful the attack. In other words, that when the cluster soul-chasing ball is used with even more powerful spirit power, it will be faster, and naturally the bone-changing soul needle's penetrating power will be even more powerful. Unless you encounter a purely defensive titled Douluo, with your spirit power, don't tell me you still couldn't injure the enemy." Even if the opponent blocks with spirit power and doesn't let them collide, once it's struck by external force it will still instantly burst. The key point to this thing's strength is its suddenness. The more unexpected its use, the higher the chance of destroying the enemy. Douluo's eyes brightened. Now he completely understood Tang San's meaning, and immediately exulted in his heart. Indeed, pretty good, little freak, quickly gift me 180. Tang San was speechless. Do you think these are sweet peas? 180. I've made 2, and just now gave them to you to test. Who had you refused to believe? What? 2? Douluo's eyes opened wide. Are you trying to make me angry? You made 2 and still used them for a test. Tell me you're joking. Tang San smiled. Seeing is believing. If I didn't let you see it with your own eyes, would you have believed it? Fine. In fact, I made 4, and I'll give you another 2. Take care of them this time. While speaking, he waved his hand, and 2 iron balls flew towards Douluo. Douluo had just now seen the power of Tang San's cluster soul-chasing balls, and even though he wasn't worried with his strength, he still jumped with fright. You little freak, are you trying to kill me? Douluo hastily condensed his spirit power into a defensive screen in front of him. But who knew that these 2 iron balls were thrown with a completely different technique than the last ones, and the moment they nearly reached Douluo they stopped in midair and fell to the ground. Douluo stretched out a hand and seized the 2 iron balls. Inwardly he sighed in admiration. This little freak's strength might not be up to my own, but these little tricks are still truly outstanding. Perhaps in the future his achievements will surpass even mine. Even though if one looked only at their value, the 2 cluster soul-chasing balls clearly weren't equal to his wishful 100 treasure purse. Looking at the cluster soul-chasing ball's ability to save his life, they were still more useful to Douluo. Collecting the 2 iron balls, Douluo clasped his hands behind his back and faced the ice and fire yin-yang well. Little freak, when will you be prepared to treat my granddaughter? Tang San looked distracted a moment. Douluo's words were the same as asking when he would leave. All people had feelings, and Tang San had been here even longer than he'd been at Shrek Academy. Even though Douluo had been brimming with menace at the start, over this time the two had developed a relationship of teachers or friends that Tang San was reluctant to part with. If not for Douluo, he absolutely wouldn't have been able to merge his understanding of medicine between these 2 worlds in so short a time, and it would have been even more impossible to make those 3 Yamas invitations. Old freak, are you so eager to get rid of me? Tang San looked at Douluo's somewhat lonely back. Douluo calmly said, Don't tell me I should keep you here for a lifetime. The outside world is a much vaster place. That is where you should go. Without enough experience, what will you rely on to climb over the titled Douluo position in the future? He didn't mask his admiration of Tang San. If the age gap hadn't been too large, perhaps this should have been called the mutual admiration of talent. The air seemed to become heavy. Neither Tang San nor Douluo spoke. Tang San didn't reply to Douluo's question. He only stepped forward to stand at his side, looking out at the ice and fire yin-yang well, frowning slightly, pondering deeply. After a long time, Tang San's furrowed brows suddenly smoothed, seemingly having figured something out. Looking at Douluo with a card up his sleeve, Old freak, you still have to do 2 things for me, right? Douluo nodded. This old man always keeps his word. As long as it doesn't violate my principles, I'll agree. Tang San grinned, saying, Then fine, I've already thought of the other 2 things. You have? Douluo's brows wrinkled, thinking, this stinking brat, what does he take my promises for? Doesn't he know how important these 3 commitments could be for him? Relying on his title Douluo strength, they weren't something to play around with. Tang San nodded, gazing at the ice and fire yin-yang well surroundings. My second condition is to let me take away all the herbs I need from here. You can't stop me. This, Douluo unhappily looked at Tang San. Although the medicaments around the ice and fire yin-yang well were precious, to someone who had already reached the peak of title Douluo like him, it wasn't of any significance. When he gave Tang San the wishful 100 treasure purse, He had already silently agreed to let him take away any plants from here. Tang San said, "Then do you agree?" "I agree. Why wouldn't I agree to such a simple matter?" Douluo said indifferently. At the same time he also indicated to Tang San that he shouldn't lightly speak his conditions now. Even leaving first and using him later was fine. Tang San, somewhat pondering, said, "That's too simple, huh? Then the next condition is a little more difficult. I don't know whether you will agree." Douluo loftily said, "To me, is there anything that's difficult?" Tang San probingly asked, "Does that mean you agree?" Douluo was no impetuous youngster. How would the old fox lightly promise anything? "Let me hear what your condition is first." Tang San, smiling, said, "Actually it's also very simple. Our Shrek Academy's teachers are comparatively lacking in strength, and also needs guards. So my third condition is to invite you as a high-ranked advisor at our Shrek Academy." Out of the question. Douluo didn't wait for Tang San to finish before rejecting him. This old man has always most feared having restricted freedom. This is already a question of principles. "I can't agree to it. You little freak. You would actually have me be a hired thug. Even the Heaven Do imperial family wouldn't have the ability to restrict me." Tang San snapped. "Who restricted you? If you want to come, then come. If you want to go, then go. Just use your name, that's all. At least, this way I could meet with you properly. I wouldn't have you as an advisor for a lifetime either. Once I've graduated you can do as you wish. Who would care?" Douluo looked distracted a moment, lowering his head to look at Tang San. Tang San was also looking at him, and in his eyes was a kind of expression Douluo had never seen on him before, a mix of 30% hopefulness and 70% pleading. "Just use my name," Douluo said in a questioning tone. Tang San hurriedly nodded, "Of course. Do you think anyone would still care what a title Douluo like you does? Of course, if you felt like giving us some pointers, I also wouldn't object." Douluo snorted unhappily, "A little freak like you still wants my directions. Maybe if you couldn't give me directions." Tang San was exultant. "Then, you agree?" Douluo showed a smiling expression, "As long as your teachers don't drive me away." "Let's go." "Go? Go where?" Tang San puzzled asked. Douluo said, "This old man never procrastinates. Since I've promised to be some advisor, I might as well bring you back, then bring my granddaughter to have you treat her." Since he could continue being with Douluo, Tang San also felt his mood ease. Laughing he said, "Don't be anxious. Have you forgotten the second thing you promised me? I still want to bring some of the plants here. Categorizing and listing them will still take time. It's been half a year, why care about a few days? Give me 3 days. In 3 days, we'll return to the academy. After 3 days, you little freak, you scoundrel, I'll beat you up." Douluo, stomping with fury, raised his hand to swat at Tang San. Tang San hastily retreated with ghost shadow perplexing track, turning around to run. "Old freak, didn't you say I could bring what I wished? You never said anything about any amounts. Besides I still left seeds and such, in a few years they'll still grow back. But, old freak, your wishful 100 treasure purse really is excellent, very capable." It was no wonder Douluo would be so furious. These past 3 days he had cultivated in his cavern, and when it was time he had come to the ice and fire yin-yang well to bring Tang San away. Only, as he once again came to the side of the ice and fire yin-yang well and saw his treasured ground had been looted to a miserable state, how couldn't he be furious? As far as the eye could see, the originally verdant garden had already become a complete mess. As if it had been plowed, the soil was turned over everywhere, without the slightest hint of green. Seeing such a scene, how couldn't Douluo be angry? Tang San discontentedly said, "Old freak, didn't you promise to let me take what I wanted? You didn't say anything about how much. I just chose to take it all. Don't worry. See, I didn't move the ice and fire yin-yang well. With its moisture, this place will be flourishing again in less than a few decades." He didn't mention that those immortal treasures he had dug up, even if it was next to the ice and fire yin-yang well, would need several centuries to be able to grow back once again. This little freak will really have me dead from anger. Douluo was speechless with fury. He had indeed promised it himself, and those drug ingredients indeed didn't have any great effect on him. However, those things had been with him for decades, how couldn't he love them? Tang San probing asked, "Let's leave." Douluo resolutely glared at him. "Let's leave." Finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Tang San, and soared up towards the mountain top. Tang San hastily released 8 spider lances, bringing him to swiftly chase after Douluo. Although there were a lot of powerful spirit beasts in the Sunset Forest, Douluo had been here for many years, and all the spirit beasts had become familiar with his smell. None of them would dare approach this old freak, and as Tang San followed Douluo out of the forest, he also didn't encounter any spirit beast attack. In order to avoid drawing attention, after leaving Sunset Forest, Tang San withdrew his 8 spider lances, only relying on Ghost Perplexing Shadow Track to follow behind Douluo. He knew he had been a bit excessive, but those first-rate medicinal ingredients couldn't be found just anywhere, and would have maximum effect in the future. Even more when he had a top-quality spirit tool like the Wishful 100 treasure purse that could keep them fresh. Without being able to restrain himself, he had cleaned the place out. On the whole journey, Tang San didn't dare provoke Douluo further. Douluo also didn't acknowledge him, and the two returned to Heaven Do City in a silent mood. Because the majority of the toxin in his body had fused into the spirit bone, Douluo's present form wasn't as conspicuous as before, and he also didn't rouse the attention of pedestrians. After entering Heaven Do City, the old freak stopped, glancing behind him at the panting Tang San. "Little freak, lead the way." Tang San caught up to Douluo's side, in a low voice saying with a smile, "Old freak, you're not angry?" Douluo glared at him. "Since I promised, I won't argue. But mark my words, only this once, never again." Tang San hastily nodded agreement, inwardly smiling. Even if there was a next time, it would still be in at least a few decades. The old freak was clearly giving himself a way out. Seeing that Douluo's anger had faded a bit, Tang San hastily led the way forward, the two heading towards the former Blue Tyrant Academy, the present Shrek Academy. While walking, Tang San couldn't help say to Douluo, "Old freak, you coming to our academy is actually quite fitting. Our Shrek Academy is also known as the Monster Academy, old freaks teaching little monsters. Doesn't that fit beautifully?" "Beautiful your head." Douluo raised his hand to knock on Tang San's head. He was tall, a full 2 heads taller than the presently 1.70 m or so Tang San. Tang San groaned, "If you hit my clever head silly, who will treat your granddaughter?" Douluo seemed to think of something, and his ice-cold expression suddenly softened. Sizing up Tang San, at the corners of his mouth gradually floated a smiling expression. From Tang San's point of view, he would rather see Douluo's stinky face. Unwillingly looking at his smiling appearance, he couldn't help shiver all over. "Old freak, what are you smiling about?" Volume 10. Icefire Alchemical Body. Chapter 69. Xiao Wu, promise never to leave me. Douluo did some calculations on his fingers. "When I consider it carefully, actually, my granddaughter is just 7 years older than you. It's not too much. When you're 18, she will only be 25. Convenient for you, kid," Tang San said with great alarm. "Convenient? Yeah, right. I don't want that granddaughter of yours." Douluo grinned, grabbing Tang San's shoulder. "You think this is up to you? Even if you're well versed in poisons, can you dissolve aphrodisiacs? Later this old man will have you try some love teas and other such things. Once the rice is cooked, I'll see what you do then." "You," Tang San saw the serious look on Douluo's face. He, who hadn't even been afraid when confronting threats to his life, couldn't help turning pale with fright right now. "Old. No, Senior Douluo. I know I did wrong. Please don't play with me, all right?" Douluo grandiosely said, "Who's playing with you? I spoke of facts, nothing more. Don't tell me my granddaughter doesn't suit a little devil like you. Even if you're a cunning little freak, your talent isn't an issue, and your future prospects are boundless. If my granddaughter could follow you, It would put me at ease. Isn't it the same if she follows Yu Tianheng? That Yu Tianheng still has the support of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan's whole school at his back. According to teacher, Yu Tianheng will very possibly be the next leader of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. How could I compare with that kind of power? Besides, who can say if your granddaughter has already cooked her rice with Yu Tianheng? Cooked rice can't be cooked again. Douluo looked distracted a moment, his complexion immediately becoming unsightly once again. This is actually possible. Enough, we'll talk about it later. Seeing Douluo had apparently dropped the notion, Tang San breathed out in relief. By now the two had already reached the academy gate. The Blue Tyrant Academy signboard had already disappeared, replaced with an enormous horizontal board inscribed with golden letters, the words Shrek Academy, written in huge, glorious golden characters. It was signed by Flender. Without waiting for Douluo to step forward, Tang San hastily ran over. He couldn't dare let Douluo walk first. If by any chance he came into conflict with the teacher at the gatehouse, it would be difficult to sort out. With Douluo's temper, who knew when he might flare up? Tang San ran forward, exchanging a few words with the guard at the gatehouse. The guard hastily ran into the academy. Old freak, let's wait here a moment. Don't forget what you promised me. You can't harm anyone from Shrek Academy. Douluo was a titled Douluo. Only Tang San had been at the Ice and Fire Yin-Yang well, and at most he was the only one in danger, but here was different. If Douluo hadn't promised not to harm anyone, he really wouldn't have dared bring him here. Douluo raised his head, looking down his nose at Tang San without saying a word. After a moment, the sound of activity within the academy attracted Tang San's attention. Flender, Grandmaster, Lu Erlong as well as Zhao Wuji, Lu Jibin, Shao Xin, and Li Yu Song, altogether 7 people quickly walked out from the academy gate towards them. The assembly of these 7 could be said to be the strongest lineup of the present Shrek Academy. Clearly they weren't here to receive Tang San. Their target was naturally that one with the Spirit Master World's highest title, the Poison Douluo that once defeated the Golden Iron Triangle. These 7 were all at least 60th rank Spirit Masters, adding a complete Spirit Master formation, further adding the Golden Iron Triangle's Spirit Fusion ability. Even if they couldn't quite stand up to Douluo, they could still block him. When the academy gate guard had reported that Tang San and an old man who seemed to be Douluo had returned to the academy, Flender, Grandmaster and the others understood that with Douluo here, until they figured out his motive, this was necessary. Teacher, Tang San looked at Grandmaster, hurriedly waving his hand at everyone. A moved radiance flickered in Grandmaster's eyes, but just as he stepped forward he was pulled back by Flender. Just this tiny action showed how cautious everyone were right now. Grandmaster was no doubt the weakest of everyone here, but he was an absolutely necessary existence in the Golden Iron Triangle's Spirit Fusion ability. If he was attacked by Douluo alone, there wouldn't be any chance of him returning alive, and the other 6 naturally also wouldn't be able to stop Douluo. As Douluo saw Flender's actions, the corners of his mouth twitched, with difficulty keeping himself from showing a disdainful expression, thinking, who do you 7 think you are? If this old man wanted to do something, even slaughtering this whole Heaven Do imperial capital wouldn't be impossible. Even though Douluo wasn't considered the most powerful among titled Douluo, there absolutely wasn't anyone who could compare to his poison in mass murder. Tang San naturally didn't have any misgivings, and quickly stepped forward to meet everyone. Teachers, I've returned. Grandmaster looked at Tang San with an inquiring gaze. Tang San nodded to Grandmaster, indicating he was fine. Dean Flender, I would like to talk to you about something. Flender constantly kept his gaze on Douluo. Only now hearing Tang San speaking to him made him turn his gaze back. Little San, what is it? He hasn't made things troublesome for you, has he? Tang San shook his head. No, Senior Douluo has been very good to me. He's taught me a lot of poison-related knowledge. Dean Flender, Senior Douluo wants to be an advisor at our academy. What do you think? What, not just Flender, including Grandmaster, Everyone present cried out in surprise practically simultaneously, their gazes becoming strange. Everyone looked at each other, for a moment speechless. Who was Douluo, a title Douluo? Let alone this Shrek Academy, even the Heaven Do Empire's #1 academy, Heaven Do Imperial Academy, didn't have a title Douluo present. Tang San looked at everyone's astonished expressions, and probingly asked, "Is it no good?" Flender swallowed. "Is what you said true?" Tang San nodded. Senior Douluo promised, only he said he wouldn't always stay at the academy. And only as an advisor. Flender and Lu Erlong simultaneously looked toward Grandmaster. Among the trio, Grandmaster was always the wise corner with a plan. Grandmaster's rigid face twitched once. This is excellent. Even though Douluo has only ever done as he wished, this person's reputation is excellent. If he promised something, he would surely see it through. Flender, while Grandmaster spoke, he signaled to Flender with his eyes. The two had been brothers for so many years, how wouldn't Flender understand Grandmaster's meaning? Hastily waving his hand, he brought everyone forward to greet Douluo. Senior Douluo, greetings. Flender, extremely enthusiastic, was the first to step towards Douluo with a smile. Even though the smile seemed a bit sinister on his face, the light in his eyes was sincere. Douluo nodded to Flender, something like returning the politeness. "I promised the little freak to be your advisor here. I don't know whether you're willing." Douluo had never been a person fond of indirectness, and with his position it was also completely unnecessary. He immediately got right to the point with his purpose in coming. Promising Tang San to come here was admittedly because it was Tang San's condition, but at the same time the peculiar friendship he had with Tang San was an important factor. Flender said without the slightest hesitation, "Of course we are. You coming to this academy will simply bring light to our humble Shrek Academy. Let alone being an advisor, even if you wanted to be dean it would be no problem." Douluo clearly wasn't interested in Flender's cordiality. Waving his hand, he said, "Being dean doesn't suit me. I haven't the time to be teaching students. Moreover, my method of cultivation is unsuitable for the vast majority of spirit masters. Since you agreed, find me a quiet place to stay. I've returned with that little freak Tang San. I'm tired, I'll rest first." Flender immediately agreed. Even if there was nothing prepared in advance, dealing with such ad hoc circumstances wasn't difficult. "Then follow me, senior." While speaking, he led the way ahead, bringing Douluo into the academy. When Douluo passed by Tang San, his lips moved, saying something to Tang San. He then followed Flender away. Of course he wasn't really tired, only he always most disliked inconvenience, and didn't want to be chatting with everyone here. Watching Flender lead Douluo away, Lu Erlong couldn't help but ask Tang San, "Little San, how did you do it? This old freak agreeing to come to our academy. It's really too inconceivable." Tang San smiled slightly, saying, "Perhaps it's because we're something of kindred spirits. I accidentally helped him with a matter. He said it was because of our friendship that he agreed to come." Grandmaster said, "No matter how, this is excellent. Teacher, is everyone well?" He naturally meant the other 6 of the Shrek 7 devils. Being gone for half a year, Tang San had greatly missed his teachers and companions. Especially Xiao Wu. Grandmaster nodded with a smile, saying, "They're all very well. I haven't told them what you've been doing before, only saying you've been cultivating in seclusion. If you had returned a few days later, maybe we wouldn't have been here." "Why?" Grandmaster said, "In this past half year they have all made not inconsiderable progress. Ma Hongjun, Ning Rongrong, and Zhu Zhuqing have all broken through the 30th rank, and already possess their 3rd spirit rings. Oscar's spirit power has also advanced 2 ranks, and Xiao Wu has even advanced 3 ranks. Dai Mabai is in seclusion, attacking the 40th rank bottleneck. Attacking the bottleneck is a bit difficult, but he should succeed soon. Once he has broken through to the 40th rank, we will go hunt spirit beasts together to obtain his 4th spirit ring." Listening to Grandmaster, Tang San couldn't help secretly sigh in admiration. Even though he himself had progressed a lot, his companions hadn't stayed idle either. Each one's strength had increased a lot, and now they had all finally reached the 30th rank. The Shrek 7 Devils' fighting strength would no doubt increase significantly. Teacher, I'll go see them. Tang San was already somewhat impatient to see his comrades. Grandmaster smiled and rubbed Tang San's head, saying, "You've only just returned, won't you rest a bit first?" Tang San shook his head. "I'm not tired. And I still have gifts for everyone." Grandmaster said, "Then come on, I'll go with you. Erlong, all of you are busy." Tang San glanced at Grandmaster, then again at Lu Erlong. The two's expressions were like always, and no change could be seen on the surface. Even though they didn't seem intimate, he could feel that Grandmaster seemed to be able to calmly accept Lu Erlong's existence. Lu Erlong nodded, her gaze not resting on Grandmaster for long, and brought the teachers in the direction of the academy's main building. Watching him gradually disappear in the distance, Tang San couldn't help asking, "Teacher, you and Aunt Erlong?" Grandmaster indifferently said, "Children shouldn't ask about adult matters. Let's go. Your comrades are all cultivating in mimicry environments." Grandmaster didn't bring Tang San towards the teaching block, but rather directly towards the forest in the back. While walking, Grandmaster asked, "Little San, what did Douluo Dalu teach you? What's actually going on with you and him?" This question had been in Grandmaster's heart for a very long time, ever since Tang San showed up after the Golden Iron Triangle fought Douluo Dalu. Grandmaster knew Douluo Dalu wouldn't so easily take a shine to Tang San's character. In this past half year he had practically constantly been worrying about Tang San. After all, Tang San was his only disciple, and even more like a son to him. Tang San said, "Douluo Dalu kidnapping me was originally because of Douluo Yan. Douluo Yan should have told her grandpa about the time I defeated her, making Douluo Dalu interested in my 8 spider lances. So he kidnapped me to research the poison in my 8 spider lances. Then what happened after? From what Douluo Dalu said, it seems you helped him." Tang San nodded. "Something like that. Douluo Dalu's poison skills had some defects. I happened to discover a way to make up for those defects. So out of gratitude he taught me a lot of things relating to using poison. If it wasn't for that, perhaps I would have been unable to return to see you alive." Tang San didn't explain it in too much detail. He could never tell Grandmaster about him coming from Tang Sect. This time together with Douluo Dalu not only increased his level of poison use, at the same time it also gave him the best excuse for the Tang Sect poison techniques. Douluo Dalu would never tell people that Tang San's poison was his own. With the world's #1 poison Douluo as cover, nobody would ever doubt the origin of Tang San's poison techniques. So it's like that. Grandmaster knew on an even deeper level that, originally, having told Douluo Dalu about Tang San's history, the reason why Douluo Dalu didn't dare kill Tang San and instead taught him poison, was greatly related to Tang San's past. Recalling this, he also felt more at ease. "Little San, in this time you've been constantly studying poison with Douluo Dalu, but you mustn't neglect your spirit power cultivation. Your companions all have sky-high talent. If you have fallen too far behind, you will perhaps never be able to catch up." "How high is your current spirit power rank?" Tang San said, 37. Grandmaster responded automatically, but he reacted very quickly, his footsteps immediately halting, his expression even stiffening a bit more. "What did you say?" "Your spirit power is already at the 37th rank. Tang San earnestly said, "Yes. Last time at Heaven Do Imperial Academy, under that board member's pressure my spirit power reached the 34th rank. Later cultivating at Senior Douluo's place, I advanced 3 ranks. Senior Douluo's place had a lot of precious plants. Perhaps it's because that kind of environment suits my cultivation. Therefore, my spirit power advanced very quickly, already reaching the 37th rank." Grandmaster showed a smile. "It seems that my worries were completely unfounded. Even while learning poison under Douluo Dalu, your spirit power growth was the fastest of everyone. I'm relieved. In less than half a year, the Continental Advanced Spirit Master Academy Grand Spirit Fighting Competition will begin. If it continues like this, perhaps, at that time you will also have had the chance to rush to the 40th rank. If it's truly like that, then, it might be impossible for you Shrek 7 devils not to leave a mark. Just as he said this, Grandmaster stopped walking. Ahead was a shrubbery, almost as tall as a person, appearing extremely dense. Grandmaster smiled slightly, and yelled towards the shrubbery, "Xiao Wu, take a break. Come see who's here." Hearing the words, "Xiao Wu," the smile on Tang San's face immediately froze, his eyes revealing a deep and grateful mind. He knew that Grandmaster had first brought him to see Xiao Wu because he and Xiao Wu were the closest. Xiao Wu was precisely the person he was most urgent to see. With a flicker, a white silhouette flashed out of the shrubbery. A pink tender face brimming with childishness, that pair of exceptionally slender taut beautiful legs, further that unbeatably slender yet extremely agile little waist, as well as the scorpion braid hanging to the ground. Could it be anyone but Xiao Wu? "Grandmaster, you've come." Xiao Wu didn't finish speaking, because in her eyes had already appeared that person she had waited for the most. Her pupils contracted practically instantly. Not caring about Grandmaster's presence, Xiao Wu threw herself into Tang San's embrace, her slender thighs as usual twisting around Tang San's waist, pulling him close. She nestled her pink tender young face deep in Tang San's shoulder, her own shoulders trembling fiercely. Tang San could clearly feel Xiao Wu's frantic heartbeats. Seeing Xiao Wu again, how couldn't he be moved? Wrapping his arms around Xiao Wu, the rims of his eyes were immediately somewhat red. Right now Xiao Wu was still a bit taller than Tang San, and her completely hanging on Tang San gave a somewhat strange impression. Grandmaster tactfully didn't look at him, his gaze instead turning into the distance. "Good Xiao Wu, don't cry. Haven't I come back?" Tang San lightly stroked Xiao Wu's back, somewhat choked, consoling her. "Wu, don't you want Xiao Wu? Why would you leave for so long?" It was no wonder that Xiao Wu was so moved. For the 6 or 7 years since meeting Tang San, the two had never been apart for more than a month. This time Tang San had been gone for half a year, and moreover she hadn't known where. Xiao Wu couldn't describe how much she had missed him. She had repeatedly asked Grandmaster where Tang San had gone, but Grandmaster naturally couldn't tell her Tang San was together with Douluo. Otherwise, what would be done if by any chance Xiao Wu rushed to the Sunset Forest? How would I be willing to part with you? It's all my fault for letting you worry." The front of Tang San's shoulder was already drenched through by Xiao Wu's tears. Her long slender legs wrapped tightly about Tang San's waist, seemingly afraid he would run away again. Xiao Wu raised her head, and by now her eyes were already thoroughly red, pouting with her little mouth. "Then in the future you can't leave me again. Even if you have to cultivate, you still have to bring me along." Fine, I promise." While Tang San wiped Xiao Wu's tears, he repeatedly consoled her. Xiao Wu's big eyes blinked and more tears flowed out, both hands grabbing Tang San's neck. She sobbed, "You know I missed you so much. Promise never to leave me." Tang San without the slightest hesitation said, "I promise, unless I die, I will never leave Xiao Wu." Xiao Wu's tears then turned to happiness. Once again leaning against Tang San's shoulder, Xiao Wu also promises, she will never leave little Sanji, even if she dies she won't leave. To the side Grandmaster helplessly shook his head, in his heart thinking, today's youth, really unrestrained. These two little fellows aren't even 14 yet. Really precocious. But he still didn't want to destroy their present mood, and only waited quietly. Tang San was after all more cool-headed than Xiao Wu. Lightly swatting Xiao Wu's butt, "Good girl, come down, teacher is still here." At this Xiao Wu recalled Grandmaster's existence, and her charming face immediately blushed, letting go of Tang San's waist and dropping to the ground. But she still held on to Tang San's arm, and no matter what was said wouldn't agree to let go. "Teacher, let's go find the others." Grandmaster turned to look at the two. Even though they were still young, they could still be considered ready to be a couple. His eyes revealed a smiling expression, nodded, and continued walking into the depths of the forest. Mimicry environment cultivation locations were chosen differently according to each spirit master's spirit. Like Xiao Wu's rabbit spirit naturally was most suited to cultivating in a shrubbery, Dai Mabai was in an animal pen, while Oscar's was the easiest. As a food system spirit master, the kitchen was the place that could best draw out his spirit power. For Ma Hongjun it was a room spread through with stoves. Of course, these were all just comparatively common mimicry environments. Under even better conditions, the help in cultivation could still increase further. For instance, if Ma Hongjun could have cultivated in a volcanic crater, then the benefits to him would be even greater. Of course, at the same time the danger would increase substantially. In a little while, Grandmaster had already brought Tang San to find everyone except Dai Mabai and the 6 Shrek 7 devils gathered in a hall. Everyone were happy to see Tang San again, and Tang San again repeated what he had said to Grandmaster. "Little San, what did you say? That Douluo Dalu came with you to the academy?" Xiao Wu, somewhat shocked, looked at Tang San, her expression somewhat pale. Tang San thought Xiao Wu was frightened of Douluo Dalu's strength and poison, and hastily comforted her. "Don't worry, Senior Douluo isn't a bad person. He also promised me that he wouldn't hurt anyone at the Shrek Academy. Nothing will happen. Besides, now he's also an advisor at our academy." Oscar grinned, saying, "This really is excellent. With a title Douluo as advisor, how couldn't our Shrek Academy's name spread through the world?" Grandmaster frowned. An academy doesn't rely on its teachers, but rather has to rely on you students. Oscar stuck out his tongue, but he was terrified of Grandmaster and naturally didn't dare retort. Xiao Wu's expression hadn't improved from Tang San's expression, and instead became even paler. Only because she kept her head down, the others didn't notice anything. "Teacher, where is Mabai secluded? I'd like to see him," Tang San said to Grandmaster. Grandmaster said, "He's at a critical juncture of his cultivation, he mustn't be disturbed now." Tang San pondered, and said, "Teacher, I think I have a way for Mabai to break through the 40th rank bottleneck. I've brought back some gifts for each of us to use. Best would be for us 7 to cultivate together. This would have a significant assistance to our cultivation." Grandmaster, somewhat astonished, looked at Tang San. Breaking through spirit power bottlenecks had always required relying on the spirit master's own strength to accomplish via unceasing effort. Even someone as familiar with spirits as Grandmaster had never found a shortcut. How couldn't Tang San's words excite him? Grandmaster was an astute person. Very quickly he became aware of the meaning behind Tang San's words. "What you want to give them is drugs brought back from Douluo Dalu's place." Tang San nodded. After Grandmaster had considered it for a moment, he said, "Using drugs to promote strength will inevitably have side effects. In the past there has been some spirit masters who cultivated like this, but they always met a bad end. You're already heaven-spanning talents on your own. There's no need for this kind of shortcut. If by any chance you spoiled things with your enthusiasm, the result wouldn't be pretty." Tang San, prepared in advance, said, "Teacher, don't worry. The things I want to give everyone have different properties and uses according to each person. There wouldn't be any side effects." Oscar, Ma Hongjun, Ning Rongrong, and even Zhu Zhuqing, all of them now had an inquisitive expression in their eyes. They all wanted to know what the things Tang San had brought back for them actually was. After Grandmaster pondered it deeply, in the end he reluctantly nodded and said, "Fine. However, you have to be careful. You can't make any mistakes. Ma Hongjun, go to the animal pen and call over Dai Mabai. Be careful. Don't get injured by the beasts." Ma Hongjun's spirit was the evil fire phoenix, which had a powerful suppressive effect on any common wild animals. Moreover, his strength already surpassed Grandmaster's, so having him go fetch Dai Mabai was naturally best. Grandmaster knew Tang San wasn't an impetuous person, otherwise he wouldn't have easily agreed. Tang San pondered, then said, "Teacher, we need a place where we won't be disturbed. Otherwise, if the outside world interferes, It might affect everyone's ingestion of the medicinal properties. Grandmaster thought about it and said, "Then we'll go to Erlong's old place. It's certainly peaceful there, and nobody would go there lightly." Since Flender took over the running of the academy, Lu Erlong had already gone to live in the school buildings. Of course she didn't feel the school buildings suited her better, but rather it was because Grandmaster lived there. The little wooden cottage she had lived in before was naturally empty. Before long, Ma Hongjun had brought back Dai Mabai. Before Dai Mabai had even arrived, his voice already echoed in the distance. "Little San, you've come back. If you hadn't, Xiao Wu might have worried herself to death." Dai Mabai wasn't much different from before, he only appeared a bit calmer. Having already passed his 16th birthday had somewhat increased his aggressiveness, but his overall imposing manner was a bit more restrained. The pair of evil eyes radiating health and vigor, his casual movements all had a kind of king among beasts elegance. Hearing Dai Mabai's words, Xiao Wu blushed and couldn't help making a spitting sound, but she didn't make any attempts to defend herself. Except for Xiao Wu, Dai Mabai was the first to meet Tang San among the Shrek 7 devils, and meeting once again was especially familiar. Holding out his hands to embrace Tang San's shoulders, he said, "Fatty said you brought back gifts for us that can even help me break through the bottleneck. Get it out quickly." Tang San laughed, raising his hand to punch Dai Mabai in the chest. "Don't worry, we'll go somewhere quiet first." Led by Grandmaster, everyone stepped into that quiet log cottage. The sunlight brought the shadows of the trees through the windows, the fresh and clean air seeping through the gaps. Listening to the melodious birdsong and the soft wind, it was very difficult to imagine this place was in Heaven Du Empire's capital city. Even Grandmaster, who was naturally disposed to living a simple life, couldn't help sighing in admiration over Lu Erlong's excellent choice. Grandmaster said to Tang San, "Begin. I'll guard you." Tang San nodded, and under everyone's inquisitive and attentive stares, his right hand stretched into the wishful 100 treasure purse to pull out a kind of plant. That was a chrysanthemum with an enormous flower in an exceptionally beautiful violet. Bizarrely, each of the chrysanthemum's petals seemed to be adorably fluffy on the outside, making them blend into each other. It didn't release any fragrance, and the stamen rising from the center of the petals was more than half a chi tall, the tip of the stamen glittering with a faint golden radiance. "What's this?" Dai Mabai was the first to ask, and the others were all also attracted by the plant Tang San pulled out. Tang San smiled faintly, saying to Dai Mabai, "Boss Dai, I prepared this especially for you. It's called Singular Velvet Sky Chrysanthemum, a neutral immortal treasure herb. When eaten, the energy will spread through the 4 limbs, blood clearing the 8 meridians, and you can practice Vajra strength body." Dai Mabai was shocked. "So awesome. Vajra strength," Tang San said with a smile. "Although Vajra strength body is a bit exaggerated, this herb is most compatible with your spirit. Your spirit power is neutral, overwhelmingly vast, and just fiercely potent. The efficacy is all in the limbs, so this will make your cultivation twice as fast for half the effort. Since you've already reached the 40th rank bottleneck, I think it will certainly help you break through the crisis. Once you've obtained your spirit ring, the medicine will continue taking effect, and should have even greater promoting effect. The gifts I've chosen for everyone all attach most importance to strengthening foundations. They won't spoil things for enthusiasm." Dai Mabai solemnly accepted the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum Tang San held out, looking deeply at Tang San. "We're brothers, so I won't say thanks." "How is this thing eaten?" Tang San said. "First eat that stamen, afterwards each of the petals, don't eat the stalk. After eating it, immediately start cultivating, dissolving the medicinal strength to break the bottleneck." Dai Mabai didn't say anything else, and immediately walked over to a corner to take the herb as Tang San instructed. For all this time the 40th rank bottleneck had always bothered him. Now having the chance to break through, his heart was already burning, impatient to begin. Oscar asked in a low voice, "Little San, what's an immortal treasure herb?" Tang San said with a smile, "This is something from heaven, that can only rarely be found in the human world. Everyone looked at each other, and including Xiao Wu, everyone's gazes became burning hot. Ning Rongrong giggled, delicately saying, "Third brother, don't be partial." Tang San said, "Don't worry, everyone has a share. Little Ao, this is yours." His hand stretched into the wishful 100 treasure purse for a second time, this time pulling out a jade case and handing it to Oscar. Oscar sighed in admiration. No need to even look, just the value of this case alone is considerable. Tang San was somewhat speechless. "Little Ao, this is just common white jade. 2 gold spirit coins will get you 1. Eh?" Oscar was part stunned, part embarrassed. Tang San laughed, saying, "However, the thing inside is indeed of considerable value. Open it and see." Oscar did as asked, and entirely different from Daimabai's singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, the instant the jade box opened, the whole room was filled with an odd fragrance. A strong orchid fragrance made everyone's hearts clear and souls brighten, the fragrance penetrating deep into the heart, rousing everyone's spirits, involuntarily inhaling. In the jade case quietly lay an 8-petaled orchid, the petals trembling minutely, entirely lustrous snow white, giving people a noble and virtuous feeling. Tang San said, "This is called an 8-petal immortal orchid. It's also an immortal treasure herb. It must be picked with gold and stored with jade, and as long as it's regulated in jadeware, it won't wither for 1,000 years, or 100 lifetimes. Among all the immortal treasure herbs I brought back with me this time, it's the one with the gentlest nature, one of the most mellow. Absorbing it is easy, but requires a very long time. Its effect is to strengthen foundations and drive out impurities. Its effect should complement the slow cultivation speed you have as a food system spirit master. The medicinal effect should even continue until you've cultivated to the 70th rank." Oscar opened his eyes wide. "So good. Little San, I love you." Volume 10. Icefire Alchemical Body. Chapter 70. Exceptional Immortal Treasures for 7 Devils. Tang San's whole body trembled. "Don't, go eat it quickly. There's no special way of eating it, chewing and swallowing will suffice, the flavor is sweet and fragrant. Just like Daimabai, you also have to focus your spirit power to assimilate the medicinal effects, afterwards slowly absorb it." Tang San had carefully thought about the most suitable plants for everyone even before he had returned. Even though there was a limited amount of immortal treasures, there was still enough for one for each of the Shrek's 7 devils. It wasn't that he didn't want to give the teachers immortal treasures as well, but the absorption rate for these immoral treasures was better the younger the user. The opposite would drain the medicinal effect. Oscar happily ran over to the other side of the room, swallowing the 8-petal immortal orchid in one mouthful, and immediately starting cultivation. Ma Hongjun was next when going by age, and he impatiently moved closer. "Third brother, mine, mine." Looking at the excited Fatty, Tang San said with a smile, "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten you. Fatty, I've thought carefully about your evil fire. This variant evil fire is admittedly very powerful, but at the same time it's constantly eroding your body. This is essentially because your phoenix flame isn't pure enough. This time I've found you a nourishing and purifying yang medicinal herb." Ning Rongrong let a giggle escape, saying, "He still needs nourishing." In this time, Fatty went out for bad things a lot. However, he said Heaven Do City was very expensive, but still spent enormously. Nourishing him even more, perhaps he'll have to go out even more frequently. Tang San smiled. "No. As I said, his evil fire's impurity leads to his own backlash. If it continues like this, then perhaps one day it will lead to his evil fire destroying him. By filtering out the impurities of his phoenix flame, he might truly be considered a phoenix spirit master." "Fatty, this is for you." That was a deep red trembling, silky soft immortal herb. Its appearance seemed very simple, only formed from red grass leaves. The tip of the grass leaves were shaped just like cock's combs, but when observing carefully one could discover its distinctiveness. The venation was unexpectedly gold. When it was taken out, the temperature in the room immediately rose sharply. "This thing is called cockscomb phoenix sunflower, swallow it without chewing." Congregate spirit power and conduct. No matter how painful it is, you must be patient, otherwise you will ruin the effect. This thing's effect is quite obvious. It should substantially increase your spirit power and flame. If you give up halfway, the medicinal effect will lower a lot. Tang San placed the herb in Ma Hongjun's hands, and Fatty immediately left. Tang San had taken out 3 immortal herbs and given them to 3 people one after another. Even Grandmaster couldn't help being moved. Let alone seeing these herbs, he had never even heard of them before. The 4th one Tang San brought out wasn't according to age Xiao Wu, but rather for Ning Rongrong. "Third brother, what are you giving me?" Not waiting for Tang San to start speaking, Ning Rongrong already ran up and grabbed his arm. Xiao Wu frowned behind, but didn't say anything. Tang San, smiling, stretched his hand into the wishful 100 treasure purse, and in a flash of golden light, a fantastic immortal herb already appeared. This was a very fantastic immortal herb. Below the stalk and leaves were all wisteria drapes, finely combed. But at the top was a golden dazzling tulip, and a heavy tulip fragrance immediately replaced Oscar's previous 8-petal immortal orchid, the rich fragrance giving a splendorous and majestic feeling. Your 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda spirit is extremely special. I thought it over carefully, and selected this immortal herb for you. This thing is known as a beautiful silk tulip. It's graceful and luxurious. By taking it you can breathe in the quintessence of heaven and earth, the radiance of the sun and the moon. Your 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda is on its own classified as a treasure type spirit. With the help of this beautiful silk tulip, the effect should be very complimenting. This flower can't be devoured. You have to breathe in the stamen, slowly absorbing the best features within. Afterwards cultivate your spirit power and slowly circulate it, letting the medicinal effects find its way to the 100 bones of all 4 limbs. Ning Rongrong took the beautiful silk tulip, and giggling said, "Third brother, I really want to kiss you. Only in order to keep Xiao Wu from upending the vinegar jar, I'll let it be. But I really can't accept this flower from you free of charge. Later little sister will definitely do something in return." 4 of the Shrek 7 devils had already obtained immortal herbs. Finally remaining was only Xiao Wu and Zhu Zhuqing. Xiao Wu stood there calm and composed without the slightest bit of anxiety. Tang San gave the others such good immortal herbs. How could he treat her unfairly? Zhu Zhuqing's natural disposition was reclusive and extremely shy. Even though she was inwardly equally brimming with expectation, she found it embarrassing to be as forward as Ning Rongrong. Tang San walked over to Zhu Zhuqing. "Zhuqing, this immortal herb I've chosen for you is the easiest to absorb and transform. Moreover, the efficacy is even better than the others, considered an all-round boost. However, to eat this immortal herb you must pay a certain price. I hope you have the mental preparation." If someone else had said this, Zhu Zhuqing would certainly have believed they had ulterior motives, but when it came from Tang San she didn't have the slightest uncomfortable feeling. Everyone had been together for so long. Even if Zhu Zhuqing very rarely spoke, how couldn't she know Tang San's character? Immediately nodding, she quietly said, "Thank you, third brother." This was the first time Zhu Zhuqing had called Tang San third brother, and Tang San couldn't help smiling slightly, once again pulling out a herb from the wishful 100 treasure purse. It was a seemingly common white flower, palm-sized, a bit like a tree peony, without leaves, the stalk connecting to a big rock. That stone was completely pitch black, and from how Tang San carried it could be seen that its weight was astonishing. On that white flower were a few flecks of red, scarlet red like blood, giving people a hair-raising feeling. Tang San grimly said, "This herb is called Yearning Heartbroken Red. Among immortal treasure herbs it's a divine treasure. It also has a legend. A very long time ago, a youth, quiet and contented, most liked gardening and planting trees, filling his garden with green and blue lotuses and bulbs, thousands of purples and reds. Ordinarily singing to flowers, toasting to the moon, when a flower fell, he would be boundlessly grieved, sweeping up the flower, burying it in the ground, shedding tears again and again. It said his feelings moved heaven, and his great love for flowers moved the heavenly flower immortal, who personally descended to the world to marry him. Happiness like fish in water need not be mentioned. But unexpectedly the good times didn't last. God learned about their matters, and was furious, saying immortals and the mundane didn't match, ordering flower immortal to return to the divine realm. That youth, having lost his lover, moaned and groaned in pain all day, depressed, discarding matters of flowers. Consequently the walls fell and fences collapsed, flowers and trees withered, the land growing desolate. One day a white-haired old man arrived, telling him that the white tree peony flower in his garden was his wife's reincarnation. As long as he destroyed the flower immortal would lose her immortality, banishing her to the mundane world to be his wife again, but he couldn't by any means destroy a flower. The words turned into a pure wind and disappeared, and the youth suddenly came to himself, deeply regretting his mean treatment of the blossoms. He again carefully tended to the flowers and plants. Even though he deeply loved his wife, he couldn't bear to burn down the tree peony. It was even more cherished than himself. Day and night watering the flowers with his tears, the tears stemmed from deep sorrow, and yearning and heartbroken he died. In his final moments, he dripped some blood on the petals, and you see those dark red stains. That is the heart's blood of that youth. Quietly listening to Tang San's story, whether it was Zhu Zhuqing or Xiao Wu to the side, both were somewhat sentimental. Even Grandmaster felt his heart sway, unable to help himself. Tang San solemnly said, "The flower is an exceptional treasure that chooses its master. When picking it you must keep your beloved in your heart, with absolute sincerity, spitting out blood on the petals. If you are at all half-hearted, even if you spit blood until you die, don't think about removing the flower. After picking the flower, as long as it is by your side it will never wither. The rock it grows from is called crow break. If it's forcefully broken, this yearning heartbroken red will equally lose its medicinal strength. Using this herb has the immortal results of heaven and earth. By my conservative estimate, it can at least increase spirit power by 10 ranks, and it will still substantially remold the body. Zhuqing, even if I'm not entirely sure what's between you and Mabai, of us 7, you are the only ones who are certainly sweethearts, therefore I've brought this to you, hoping you can become that destined person." Zhu Zhuqing looked blankly at this touching bloody tree peony yearning heartbroken red in front of her, softly nodding, her gaze floating over to Dai Mabai cultivating not far away. "I'll try." Urging the spirit power within, prompting the movement of qi and blood, Zhu Zhuqing's cherry lips parted, spitting a drop of blood on the petals. The moment she spit out blood, in her mind was fixed the figure of Dai Mabai. But for some reason she recalled Dai Mabai's dissolute past, and her attention shifted slightly, unable to keep her state of mind from swaying. When the blood fell on the petals, the yearning heartbroken red trembled slightly. Tang San, Xiao Wu, Zhu Zhuqing and Grandmaster's gazes were all fixed on this flower, quietly waiting. However, Tang San quickly lost hope. That yearning heartbroken red swaying gradually stopped, without falling off. Zhu Zhuqing sadly said, "I'm sorry, third brother, my heart is too greedy, I can't take this flower." Tang San sighed, helplessly shaking his head. "Zhuqing, don't be like that. When I returned I prepared you another herb as backup. Wait a moment." While speaking, Tang San held up the yearning heartbroken red to Grandmaster. "Teacher, you and Aunt Erlong's feelings are deep and heavy, it would be better for you to try. Perhaps this yearning heartbroken red might be able to change your spirit variation." Grandmaster sighed, saying, "Such a divine treasure, how could I eat it? By now I have long ago passed the age for cultivating. If it is destined for me, I will keep it at my side forever." Looking at the blood stains on the yearning heartbroken red, Grandmaster couldn't help recalling all that had happened between him and Lu Erlong. A burst of pain in his heart. He didn't use his spirit power, but directly raised his hand to hit his chest. As Tang San cried out in alarm, blood forced its way out of his mouth, just right to spurt onto the flower. The moment he spit out the blood, Grandmaster's spirit was equally shocked. In his mind appeared the two most painful words of his life, "little sister." This time the yearning heartbroken red swayed even more fiercely, in a moment about to fall from the black breaking rock, but in the end lacking that last trace of strength, the swaying returned to its original position. Whether it was the blood Grandmaster or Zhu Zhuqing had spit out, both gradually disappeared. Grandmaster said in a rough voice, "I'm always unable to put down the burden in my heart. I'm not qualified to take this herb." With a dispirited expression he turned to look out the window, apparently again recalling those sad forgotten events. As Tang San prepared to put away the yearning heartbroken red, taking out the backup he had prepared for Zhu Zhuqing, suddenly, a small poo sound echoed. When Tang San turned his head to look, he saw a drop of blood had already fallen on that yearning heartbroken red, and before he could react, the yearning heartbroken red, this time without the slightest swaying, already quietly fell from the black breaking rock, falling into slender jade white hands. Xiao Wu wiped a bloodstain from the corner of her mouth, her charming face revealing a smiling expression, looking at that touching flower in her hand with blurred emotions in her eyes. "I didn't expect that I would be this destined person." Tang San's heart shook, and Zhu Zhuqing to the side was equally shaken. None of them had expected that this yearning heartbroken red's final owner would actually be Xiao Wu. In that previous moment, Tang San's gaze had been fixed on Grandmaster and hadn't seen it, but Zhu Zhuqing clearly saw. When Xiao Wu spit out blood, her gaze didn't leave Tang San for a moment. That single-mindedly devoted expression was something Zhu Zhuqing would never forget. Until now she had always seen how good Tang San was to Xiao Wu, but now she truly understood what position Tang San held in Xiao Wu's heart. Zhu Zhuqing saw very clearly how pure Xiao Wu's gaze at Tang San had been. Perhaps even they didn't know whether the feelings between them were that of man and woman, but their feelings were absolutely the purest sincerity, without any flaw. And that yearning heartbroken red became the best proof. Tang San looked stupidly at Xiao Wu, for a long while speechless. Xiao Wu lowered her head, her fingertips caressing the flower petals. "Little San, that story was definitely true, right?" Tang San said, "I don't know. Eat it, it will give you the best help." Xiao Wu shook her head. "No, Grandmaster was right. An immortal herb like this, how can people part with it by eating it? Didn't you say that? As long as it recognized its owner, it will never wither. I want to keep it with me, loving it and cherishing it." But Tang San somewhat hesitantly thought to say something, but was interrupted by Xiao Wu. "Don't worry, Ji, I won't fall behind everyone. I will make great effort to cultivate." Xiao Wu naturally understood what Tang San was worried about. Even though she didn't advance to the next step in strength, because she didn't eat this yearning heartbroken red, at this moment her heart was already content. Just like Zhu Zhuqing thought, she hadn't known what her feelings towards Tang San actually were, but at this moment, this yearning heartbroken red had already told her. To her, there was nothing more important than this. Tang San would never force Xiao Wu to do anything. Raising his hand to gently caress her head, he said with a smile, "Then protect it properly, and it will also always protect you." Stretching his hand into the wishful 100 treasure purse, Tang San pulled out the 6th immortal herb. That was a white flower with a gem-like luster, appearing spotless as a blue lotus white root. Tang San handed over it to Zhu Zhuqing, saying with a smile, "This thing is called daffodil jade flesh bone. Its function is to soften muscle and mend bone, clearing the 8 extraordinary meridians. Originally I was going to give it to Xiao Wu, but she already has the yearning heartbroken red, and this immortal herb suits you just as well. Take it at once." Perhaps it was because she couldn't obtain the yearning heartbroken red's approval, but Zhu Zhuqing was somewhat depressed, sadly shaking her head. "Since you were going to give it to Xiao Wu, you should still give it to her." Tang San shook his head. "No, a person of integrity can't be too greedy. Each of these immortal treasure herbs are precious treasures that heaven yearns for. Taking several is no good, it will instead be harmful. Even if Xiao Wu doesn't eat the yearning heartbroken red, the yearning heartbroken red's energy still exists. If she takes yet another immortal treasure herb, she will be unable to completely absorb it, so this daffodil jade flesh bone should go to you. Its effect will lead to the same result by different means as Mabai's singular velvet sky chrysanthemum. Your spirit is similar to Mabai's, and using it won't be a problem. When eating it, only eat the petals, then finally suck on the stamen, that will absorb its efficacy. At the same time, you have to urge your spirit power. Zhuqing, remember, you have to stay calm to absorb its best properties. Thank you, third brother. Zhuqing tightly gripped the daffodil jade flesh bone and walked over to sit by herself in a corner. Xiao Wu was still playing with the yearning heartbroken red in her hands, and Tang San couldn't help ask once again, Xiao Wu, are you really not prepared to take it? With it your strength would increase greatly. Xiao Wu lightly shook her head. Gee, I won't eat it, unless one day. She didn't continue, but her gaze floated to Tang San's face. From within Xiao Wu's big eyes, Tang San saw a somewhat different spirit. He didn't know why, but Tang San didn't dare look directly at this light. Tang San felt about in the wishful 100 treasure purse, and after hesitating a moment pulled out a mildly purple medicinal herb. The top of the herb was like a cap, precisely a Lingji mushroom. The Lingji mushroom's cap was purple, with a jade-green stalk below, growing 9 leaves. Tang San walked over in front of Grandmaster, teacher, even though this 9 treasure purple zoysia doesn't count as an immortal treasure, it still strengthens foundations, its effect promoting energy. It will have a considerable beneficial effect to your body. Please take it. Without waiting for Grandmaster to decline, Tang San pulled off the Lingji cap from the stem, presenting it to Grandmaster. Seeing the earnest light in Tang San's eyes, Grandmaster secretly sighed, but still accepted it and put it in his mouth, chewing it a few times and swallowing. The Lingji's nature is mild, but this 9 treasure purple zoysia is a top-quality Lingji. Teacher, since Xiao Wu doesn't want to eat the yearning heartbroken red, let her keep watch over us and cultivate a moment to dissolve its medicinal effects. Grandmaster nodded, reining in his mind, as much as possible keeping himself from thinking about Lu Erlong. Sitting down in the light from the window, he started to quietly cultivate. Gee, don't you have anything for yourself? Xiao Wu asked. Tang San said, I do. While speaking, he pulled out a seemingly unremarkable herb from the wishful 100 treasure purse. Its body was jade green, but bizarrely at the center of the plant were 3 snow-white leaves, and at the center of the leaves were a few water droplets, as if dew left behind in the morning. This herb is called full moon wearing autumn dew. Eating it will train piercing eyes, passing through 10,000 strange things. Even though the description is a bit exaggerated, it will be of considerable benefit to my purple demon eye cultivation. That can also be considered an immortal treasure. Xiao Wu frowned, saying, Gee, why did you give everyone herbs to promote their strength, but only this for yourself? Even if I don't understand these immortal treasures, shouldn't yours be the best? Tang San smiled faintly, saying, even though the full moon wearing autumn dew isn't considered the best immortal treasure, its effect is still better than you imagine. Besides, I've already taken 2 kinds of immortal treasure herbs before, I can't be greedy. Just those 2 herbs are enough to benefit me all my life. I even hesitated over this full moon wearing autumn dew again and again before deciding to take it. Its medicinal effect is very mild, and doesn't conflict with the 2 immortal treasures I used before. Even though Tang San still hadn't completely absorbed the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot he used half a year ago, his originally gentle mysterious heaven skill had already changed significantly. Since it was these 2 kinds of extreme herbs he used simultaneously, these 2 kinds of herbs within his body neutralized anything absorbed later. There wouldn't be any destructive effects to Tang San's body, but the 2 herbs' efficacy could arbitrarily change under Tang San's control. In other words, within his spirit power the extreme cold and extreme hot energies had already mixed. These 2 energies didn't belong to the blue-silver grass spirit, but rather to Tang San's internal strength. Only when his spirit power was infused into blue-silver grass would there be any effect to the spirit. Then hurry up and eat it. Xiao Wu urged. Tang San nodded, raising the full moon wearing autumn dew in front of him, tilting it slightly, letting the transparent drops of liquid drop into his mouth. The moment those drops of liquid left the leaves of the plant, the whole full moon wearing autumn dew completely withered in Tang San's hand, in the blink of an eye becoming dust wafting through the air. Tang San didn't say anything else, without leave walking over to sit next to Grandmaster, adopting a lotus posture and quietly starting to cultivate. Right now only Xiao Wu was still awake in the small log cottage. Standing there, her gaze never left Tang San, her eyes revealing a struggling light. In her heart reverberated a voice only she could hear. Mustn't I leave him after all? If I leave, could we still meet again? But, if I didn't leave, perhaps sooner or later that title Douluo that returned with him would be harmful to me. Little San, thank you for this yearning heartbroken red. It let me understand so much. No, I can't leave, just now I swore never to leave him. Only when I'm together with him will I feel the happiness Mama talked about. There was an unhesitating light in Xiao Wu's eyes. Nobody knew just how fearless she was to make this decision, or just how determined. The minutes and seconds slowly passed. In a flash it had already been 6 hours, and the effect of the immortal treasure herbs showed. Besides Xiao Wu, the other Shrek 7 devils and Grandmaster all now showed different degrees of change. Dai Mabai, who had taken the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, had by now grown a layer of white fur all over, just like when he summoned his white tiger for spirit body enhancement. Originally sitting cross-legged, now he lay sprawled like a dark character on the ground, the 4 limbs clearly having swollen to twice their original size, the sounds of cracking bones constantly rising from his body. His 3 spirit rings were flashing with breathtaking speed. From his throat occasionally rose a thunder-like low roar. His whole body quivered with a kind of particular rhythm. Oscar was the most tranquil of everyone, only sitting there quietly. But his body was emitting a fragrance like the 8-petal immortal orchid, and a faint white mist seeped from his skin, undulating densely around him. He was the most handsome among the Shrek 7 devils, and being set off by this white mist even more increased his earthy nobility. Ma Hongjun's appearance was the most fiery. By now the clothes on Fatty's torso had completely turned to ashes, exposing bright red fat. The coxcomb phoenix sunflower's medicinal effect was extremely potent, and his skin constantly exuded thin layers of juices. Fatty's body looked like cooked shrimp, and even his hair had become fiery red. Bizarrely, whenever a layer of black juice seeped out of his body, his fat would contract a bit. Xiao Wu standing to the side couldn't help but think that what Tang San gave Fatty to eat was some weight loss drug. Ning Rongrong's change was the most magnificent. The 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda floated in front of her in a halo of 7-colored light, 3 rings of light flickering within, set off by a layer of intense golden light. This golden light was released from Ning Rongrong herself, bringing a strong tulip fragrance, a gem-like light moving within, just like a fairy descended to the mortal world. Each time the golden light strengthened, it seemed Ning Rongrong's 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda became even more beautiful and dazzling. Ning Rongrong's golden light and Oscar's white mist seemed to give off a mutually attracting feeling. The white mist and golden light flowed together in the air, the 2 fragrances mixing together, creating a kind of incomparably cozy scent. Even Tang San didn't know that the beautiful silk tulip Ning Rongrong 8 and the 8-petal immortal orchid Oscar 8 were a pair of mandarin duck herbs, with a complementing effect just like the octagonal mysterious ice grass and infernal precious apricot he ate. Similar circumstances arose for Zhu Zhuqing and Dai Mabai, but it wasn't because of any relationship between their herbs, but rather because of their spirit fusion ability. After Zhu Zhuqing ate the daffodil jade flesh bone, a layer of faint jade light spread all over her body. Different from Dai Mabai, who lay spread-eagled on the ground, she moved from cross-legged to standing upright as the medicinal effect released, standing there with both hands crossed over her ample chest, quietly absorbing the medicine. As the white tiger radiance appeared from Dai Mabai, it was echoed by Zhu Zhuqing's black civet, their breathing completely in sync, each inhalation and exhalation fitting each other. Grandmaster sat there very serenely, his whole body suffused with a faint purple light. Even though his appearance wasn't as fiery as Ma Hongjun, just like Ma Hongjun, his body was constantly exuding a layer of black fluid. The coxcomb phoenix sunflower and the 9 treasure purple zoysia both had the effect of rebirth. This was something Tang San had neglected to mention. Right now Tang San's own reaction wasn't very large. Only his head was enveloped in a layer of pure golden light, the golden light constantly condensing towards his eyes like threads of silk or strands of hair. Xiao Wu stood there holding the yearning heartbroken red, quietly sniffing its rich fragrance. Her gaze only rarely swept across the others, and was otherwise fixed on Tang San. The sun ascending in the east gradually began to descend in the west. The first to awaken from cultivation was the one who had taken the gentlest herb 8-petal immortal orchid, Oscar. Stretching his arms wide, Oscar opened his eyes as if he had just woken up from sleep, so comfortable. Xiao Wu glared at him, saying in a low voice, "Everyone else are still cultivating, lower your voice." Oscar blinked, only then discovering the others sitting around him. Hastily covering his mouth, he stood up. Xiao Wu looked him up and down a few times. She found that the earthen noble air that had appeared on his body when he absorbed the 8-petal immortal orchid hadn't faded when cultivation ended, and his whole body looked like it was covered in a layer of glossy luster. "Is anything different?" Xiao Wu quietly asked. Oscar looked distracted a moment, remembering to sense the changes to his body. Very quickly his expression became odd, a double mood of pleasant surprise and disbelief. The smile on his face gradually grew, and if it hadn't been for the others right now cultivating around them, perhaps he might have laughed out loud right now. "What? Don't cover your mouth." Xiao Wu slapped Oscar's hand. A burning excitement appeared in Oscar's eyes. "Amazing, it's really too amazing." "Amazing your head." Xiao Wu glared at him. "Speak quickly, what is it?" Oscar grinned, holding out a hand, shaking it in front of Xiao Wu. 5 ranks. My spirit power increased a full 5 ranks. This is just too unbelievable. I've already reached the 38th rank. Heavens, I'll overtake Daima Bai soon. Even though he had guessed that the immortal treasure herb Tang San gave him would have a very good effect, hearing it from his own mouth was still different. 1 8-petal immortal orchid had actually helped Oscar's spirit power leap up 5 ranks. In other words, right now they were on more or less the same average spirit power as those Emperor Team Spirit Masters who were 5 years older. "What are you squawking for? Isn't it just 5 ranks? Then I'm still better off." Ning Rongrung's voice rose from the side. The golden light over her body was already completely gone. Her right hand supported her 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda, and underneath the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda was a tulip petal-like golden outline. Ning Rongrong and Xiao Wu smiling looked face to face. "I've improved 6 ranks, 37th rank." Oscar couldn't help say, "This must be a dream. If cultivation were to become this easy hereafter, then what would there still be to work hard for? Every day we'd just eat flowers." Xiao Wu curled her lips. "Don't go dreaming. Little San said that you can't eat several of these immortal treasure herbs. Eating more will instead be harmful. Are you still dissatisfied with gaining 5 ranks? Grandmaster said that the younger the easier it is to cultivate. You're still just 15. Ning Rongrong excitedly said, "I really didn't expect that I would advance so much so shortly after just breaking through the 30th rank juncture. Maybe before long we'll also be able to reach the 40th rank. Moreover, I feel that my 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda seems to have changed a bit. Even if I can't say just how it has changed, I still feel somewhat abnormal." Oscar lowered his head to look at the pagoda in Ning Rongrong's hand, then suddenly called out, "I know." Ning Rongrong covered his mouth. "Be a bit quiet." Oscar pulled away Ning Rongrong's hand from his face, deliberately lowering his excited voice. "Rongrong, count quickly. How many layers does your 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda have?" Ning Rongrong looked distracted, then paid attention to her pagoda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. Why, how did it become 9? Ning Rongrong only felt a heat rush from her heart. Right now, even her voice trembled. What did the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda becoming 9 layers mean? It meant she no longer had a 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda, but rather the legendary 9 treasure glazed tile pagoda, the lifelong goal of her father, 7 treasure glazed tile school master Ning Fengji. And now she had actually reached it herself. Ning Rongrong couldn't keep her gaze from turning to Tang San. If it hadn't been for Xiao Wu, right now she would have had the impulse to devote her life to him. Only the directly related members of the 7 treasure glazed tile school understood the meaning of the 9 treasure glazed tile pagoda. All of this really was far too significant to the entire 7 treasure glazed tile school. After a brief excitement, Ning Rongrong gradually calmed down, but the hand supporting the 9 treasure glazed tile pagoda still trembled. She knew that Tang San's kindness no longer affected just her, but the entire 7 treasure glazed tile school. It seemed she would have to make a trip back home. Have you absorbed them well? This was the moment Tang San's voice rose, standing up from the floor with both eyes closed. Third brother. Ning Rongrong suddenly pounced at him, giving Tang San a big hug, both hands around his neck, kissing his face hard. Her actions made Tang San dumbfounded, and even Oscar and Xiao Wu were stunned, both their faces becoming somewhat strange. Fortunately, what Ning Rongrong said next made him relieved. Vinegar jar is an idiomatic expression for a jealous person.